across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and I'm very grateful for your company. So much to talk about, so we're with you all the way until 1 o'clock. Don't forget you can go to my YouTube page if you've missed anything from this show or indeed earlier in the week. The Julia... You can't get next week's shows yet, though. That's the only weird thing about this. But anyway, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is what it's called, and you hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, West Streeting has ordered an independent review of the diagnosis of mental health conditions as Labour seeks a crackdown on welfare spending. Yeah, we'll believe that when we see it, because when they talked about a crackdown, even the Prime Minister earlier this week doing a speech about welfare reform, the whole point of reform is to cut the costs, right? Get help to the right people and cut the costs. They still did that after spending an extra, let me check, £16 billion of your and my money on people on benefits, but there we are. But we know one of the biggest rises is people with mental health conditions, ADHD, autism, anxiety, all of those things. But those are now the most common reason for a sickness benefit claim. But 4.4 million people of working age now are claiming disability or incapacity benefits. It's a rise of 1.2 million since 2019. Something is clearly going on. And what is going on is an awful lot of people are swinging the lead. And so we need to have an investigation into it. If that investigation actually results in people not being able to claim benefits for what is just basically normal human spectrum feelings, emotions and ability, will that make any difference? I'd love to know your thoughts on that. But I also very particularly want to know your thoughts on the announcement that Labour's, they've been accused of a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy after it was revealed that 4 mayoral elections scheduled for next May, along with that big set of elections across England in terms of the local elections, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Parliament elections, they are now set to be postponed by 2 years. These were elections for the new mayoralties of Essex, Hampshire and the Solent, Sussex and Brighton, and Norfolk and Suffolk, being pushed back to 2028. Reform UK have said this is a blatant attempt to stop big wins for the party, given that it comes after 9 different elections were delayed from last year to this year. Does probably tell you something about what Labour is running scared of. We'll be talking in the next half hour to the man who accused Labour of a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. That is Tories' James Cleverly. Coming up very, very soon as well. It's interesting. If you're uniting the Tories, Reform and the Liberal Democrats, I'm guessing the Greens as well, against this, maybe Labour, you're up to something dodgy. I want to know your response to that. Are they just basically trying to avoid any elections that they're going to lose? Because they're going to have to cancel all the elections coming up in the next few years, aren't they? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, your thoughts as well on facial recognition technology. Police could be given access to our passport database in this country to catch criminals, they say, under an expansion of facial recognition technology could be deployed in every city, town and village. Labour proposing that police be allowed to compare photos of crime suspects against facial images on government databases. We've already got CCTV cameras everywhere. Has that helped our crime rates? Not one jot. By the way, if you ever are the victim of the crime, you'll find A, there were no CCTV cameras there. B, they weren't working at the time. C, someone has already gone over the footage. Or D, it's just not very good quality. But facial recognition cameras are apparently the solution to all of our problems. Or is that just Big Brother? We'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that as well. So the number to call about all those topics, but in particular there's elections being postponed. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Get in touch on Talk, on text, with putting Talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. All together now. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. I hope you are chiming in at home. Don't leave me hanging on that one. Anyway, talking to me and you about all of these big topics. Delighted to say it's Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning.
Good morning.
I want to start with the mayoral elections being postponed.
Yes.
Here's the thing, right? In May 1945, the war in Europe ended.
Yep.
We had VE Day on the 8th of May, right? 2 months later, this country, after 5 years of war, was able to hold a general election.
Yes.
in every constituency across the land where everyone was able to vote, right? I mean, by the way, the war in Japan was still ongoing, okay, in the Far East, right? And yet, apparently, reorganisations of local authorities, as we discovered from Angela Rayner last year, the elections that were due to take place in May this year, earlier this year, they didn't take place in 9 different areas because they couldn't. There was no point because they were going to be reorganised. There was no point electing people. There was an argument there. There was a bit of it. It wasn't. I don't think that's the reason why they did it. But there was at least an argument there. This time around, it's 4 mayoral elections: Essex, Hampshire and the Solent, Sussex and Brighton, Norfolk and Suffolk. Those are the 4 areas. They're going to be pushed back, not just from May next year, still quite a long way away, five and a bit months away, guys, right? They're going to push that back to not like, you know, September next year, not to May 2027, but to May 2028. So we're saying that we can hold a general election in this country after a 5-year-long world war, 2 months later, but it's going to take more than 2 years, almost 2.5 years, for them to be able to be organised enough to hold mayoral elections. What does that tell you about A, the state of our country, B, the state of these local councils, and C, the motives of this Labour government that seems to have quite a thing for cancelling, postponing, delaying elections that it thinks it won't win?
Well, it's even worse than that. Because it's not 2 to 2.5 years, it's 3 years plus. And it must have been something the government thought about before they came in, because it was the 5th of February 2025 that Angela Rayner, or it was reported that Angela Rayner standing up in Parliament and talking about this devolution plan and the local elections. So if they've talked about the plan, there should have been a plan beforehand. So they've been thinking about this for 4-5 years, and they'll have had the councils thinking about it for 4 or 5 years, and they can't get it together. This is politically motivated because Keir Starmer knows that he is going to get a bloody nose, and he's trying to postpone exactly how bad it is.
I mean, 4 mayoral election defeats aren't perhaps going to be the thing that's, you know, like, but if it wasn't those, then Keir Starmer would have stayed on. It's going to be embarrassing. But you can't just go around randomly cancelling elections because you can't get away with that. I thought during COVID the cancelling of local elections was also outrageous. People can quite easily vote, as you know, during
and I personally think that the mayoral step is wrong, because you're taking too big a jump that there is from central government down to local government. I think if the United Kingdom is to work with devolved governments across the board, there should be equal devolved governments for each of the components of the United Kingdom, and then Westminster can focus on the big stuff and stop getting fixated on minutiae. And this is minutiae.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm all in favour of quite a lot of these measures to sort of stop having, you know, 2 different authorities in charge of the same sodding thing. It's chaos. Of course, there's no question at all about that. But again, I don't want any of these people in charge of anything if they can't organise an election in that time. Now, either these people need to step up and go, yes, we are perfectly capable of organising an election for next May, or if they say we are not capable of doing that, in which case we are aware now that we are so utterly incompetent, we should probably either be the Chancellor of the Exchequer or run the Office for Budget Responsibility, or we should be on the unemployment.
If you're the person running the Office of Budget Responsibility took responsibility for what they got wrong and resigned. None of the others do that. No,
exactly. I mean, it is absolutely shocking. Do you agree with James Cleverly, who we're going to speak to in about 20 minutes' time, the Tory frontbencher? He says the government is basically making a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy.
100%. Keir Starmer's running scared. That's the trouble. He doesn't know where to turn at the minute. Every time he looks around the corner, he gets punched in the face by something, and he realises it's his own fault, because he's not actually getting punched. He's running straight into a door handle, and he's put the door handle there himself.
Presumably, he's being hit in the face by the door handle because he's still on his knee to Black Lives Matters.
Yes, must be.
That's my main picture. I ever picture our Prime Minister. It's on his knee. I mean, Zia Youssef, Reform's UK head of policy, has said this is a blatant attempt to stop big reform wins next May. It's an act of a desperate government clinging on to power by any means necessary. I mean, They don't help themselves, do they?
They don't.
I genuinely am of the I'm of the incompetence cock up explanation for everything rather than conspiracy. But how convenient, how just wonderfully convenient, coincidentally convenient that there's an excuse to basically not hold elections in areas which are very likely to vote for reform. I mean, I don't think the Tories are necessarily losing out as much as they'd like to think.
Well, I put it down to one thing. You're an old friend of the show and a good friend of mine, Admiral Chris Parry, had just announced that he was the Reform candidate for Hampshire.
You don't get much more credible than that.
And the Solent, and he's got this habit of winning wars and
former NATO commander
and doing things. And the day he announces that, then this comes out from the government. So they're running scared of Chris, I think.
That's the story. Chris, it's all your fault. It's all your fault for being a too credible candidate. But I'm sorry, it's looking really dodgy. And as people say, this is the sort of thing that despots and dictators do.
If it smells bad, it is bad.
And also, it's one of those things where, like, you would realise this is what it would be look like, and therefore you wouldn't do it on that. You'd say, you know what, it might be chaos. And here's the thing. Turnout for these sort of regional elections and mayor elections is pitiful. I mean, there's an argument not to have them because they're so pitiful. Sort of 20% of the electorate at best. So, it's not like it was going to be this massively complicated affair.
Well, yes, but turnout and the issues seem to be two different things. The people who don't go and vote will then complain that their bins aren't being emptied, that the potholes aren't being filled in, and everything else. And that's what these local councils have responsibility for.
I always vote in every local election. Any election I'm entitled to vote in, I voted, and I still complain about my bins not being collected.
But you're entitled to then.
Exactly. That's always my rule. Yeah. Do give us a call. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, it's... on every measure, for every reason that could be given, even the reason they're giving is an unacceptable reason.
Correct.
And we don't think that's the real reason. Yeah. They're running scared. Again, I'm not entirely sure that not losing for these mayoral elections is going to be the absolute, this is the clincher for the future of Keir Starmer. But they are... If Labour thought they'd win these 4 mayoral elections next year,
they'd be on.
They'd be happening. Yes. I think we all know that, don't we? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. I mean, look, I'm very critical for what Republicans and Democrats do, but particularly Republicans in America. This sort of gerrymandering of things. I feel really strongly about having lots decisions about where boundaries are, constituencies, things like that, being really, really strictly done by neutral bodies that aren't party political, and the returning office is always non-party political. This stuff is really, really important in democracy. You mustn't just have democracy, you must be seen to have democracy. Yeah. This is an absolute undermining, and you just simply cannot be critical of other countries for not holding free and fair elections if you're not holding them yourself. So do get in touch, 0344 499 1000, as quite a lot of you already are. Let's also talk about West Street and the Health Secretary ordering an inquiry into mental health overdiagnosis, including ADHD, looking at autism and lots of other mental health conditions, which are now the backbone of all those extra sickness benefit claims we're seeing. 4.4 million working age people claiming disability or incapacity benefit, 1.2 million more since 2019. There will be people who've been affected by lockdowns and closures and people being at home. There will be, but that happened in pretty much every country around the world and in countries in neighbouring countries in Europe, and they have not seen this at all. Yeah. This is people who are like, some of them will just be going, frankly, they're taking the mick. I'm being polite, and
I know some of them who are doing
that. I think everyone I know knows someone, often in their family, who they believe is doing this. But also, you've got your middle class parents who've been gaming the system, getting their kids an extra half an hour in the exams. My daughter's highly selective academic school, private school. Parents that they're well off, the kids are bright, right? Roughly about more than half of the kids were getting extra time in exams. I mean, give me not my kid, I'd like to point out, but that's called cheating where I come from. Called cheating, but completely the norm for a lot of people. And then there are a lot of people who want the benefits because you get your kid on these things. You just bet you're eligible for this, you're eligible for that, your mobility vehicle, your whatever, and it's costing us a fortune. It's not good for the kids. It's not good for the adults, and we are overdiagnosing mental health problems when actually a lot of it is people's normal human emotions.
100%, and this is something I support completely that Wes Streeting's doing. And I know so many people with labels for different conditions, and a large number of them are extremely successful in what they do.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's no way should, being given a label, give you the automatic right to benefits and say that you therefore cannot work. Because an awful lot of people who have got different conditions, whether it be ADHD, whether it be autism or anything else, can add value in an awful lot of different areas in ways that other people who don't have the labels can. But it's a reflection that everyone is somewhere on some form of a spectrum. Yeah. And what this is doing is it's taking away from those people that actually genuinely need help.
And this is always the key thing. People, whenever you talk about this, we need welfare reform, blah, blah, whatever it is, people go, don't you care about the same? Yes, and it's because I care about those people, whether children or adults, I want them to be able to get the focused care and quickly that they need, and sometimes the financial help that is needed because of those extra disabilities. I've interviewed mums with, I remember, it's such a vivid memory being in the home with this mum, and the dad had long left, 4 kids, 2 of whom were severely autistic, twin boys. And I mean, it was sort of like having animals running around, like out of control animals. It was I was actually scared for my own safety, the damage to the house. And this was, the other kids were absolutely lovely. This wasn't a parenting issue. This wasn't mums giving them all, Coca-Cola at 6 in the morning and they're never allowed, they're not out. She was doing her best on her own, and 2 of her kids had serious mental health issues. And she wasn't getting the help she needed. She was absolutely desperate. We can't help her if everyone says, oh, my kid needs some help. No, what your kid needs is a routine, lots of outdoor exercise, lots of physicality. They need to have healthy meals, get rid of the phones, get rid of the Game Boys, get rid of all the screens, and get them doing active physical things and interacting with other human beings. That's what most kids need. And a friend of mine who's a head teacher in an inner city comprehensive, and he says, God, about 200 kids or plus in the school will have all these different things telling them that there's a mental health problem. Or he goes, I reckon 6 kids in the class in the whole school, if they didn't have their medication, we're all in trouble, right? Yeah. But the other ones, it's just bad parenting.
I've got personal experience of something that will fall into this category, and it's PTSD. And PTSD, because it's a catchy term, a lot of the charities used it to try and generate money, and that meant that an awful lot of people thought that they had to have a little bit of PTSD.
But anything bad that's ever happened to you, it's PTSD.
I've
Your
got
parents
PTSD.
Divorced, you got PTSD.
PTSD. I was very carefully diagnosed, and it was confirmed by consultants.
You had PTSD from fighting in a war.
Yes, but again, there's a lot of former military thought that they had to have it. People don't recognise that if you have been properly diagnosed with PTSD, it is a life-changing or a life-ending condition. Yeah. And I saw that whenever the masses seemed to be getting it, those that really needed the help didn't, and an awful lot of them quietly shuffled off this mortal coil at their own hands because they weren't getting the help because the system was overloaded.
If everyone's got it, then no one's got it, and you can't focus. And people waiting often years to get a diagnosis. But I mean, certainly I know round my way, especially for the kids, basically the well-off parents, they get their. Everyone finds out who's the educational psychologist who's signing everyone off. Lovely job. You go along, they charge an absolute fortune, you get your kid on this. And there's something the average middle-class parents spending 11 grand getting their kids. Most parents haven't got a spare 11 grand. You
get your child statemented and gives it this.
There you go, tick, tick, tick.
And if you're on benefits, if you get your child statemented, all of a sudden you get an awful lot more benefits.
Yeah, there are different motivations for different parents to do this. I imagine a lot of those parents think they're doing the right thing, but they're not, and they need to be told that. Here's the thing: Wes Streeting, I'm sure he wants to tackle this. By the way, Wes Streeting also is allowing experimentation on children with puberty blockers, which is if you think that you're born in the wrong body, that is a mental health problem. It is body dysmorphia. That's what we used to call it. You are not born in the wrong body. If you think you are, that's it's a serious mental health problem, and should be treated in the same way as anorexia or bulimia. If you think you're fat and you're not, that's a mental health problem. So he's quite happy for some mental health problems to be treated as, so I've got some issues, my trust issues. Do I believe for a nanosecond that when they find out from their investigation that actually there are a load of people who are being overdiagnosed, will they do anything about it?
No.
Of course they won't, because Labour backbenchers will be in uproar, because all of their voters are going, sod that, I'm getting thousands of pounds from those so-called rich people over there, ordinary people going to work.
And getting everything else free.
They're not going to do anything about it.
Of course they're not. course not. So it's another inquiry that's going to cost multiple millions of taxpayers' pounds to turn around and not stop multiple billions of taxpayers' pounds being given to people who don't deserve it.
Another happy Thursday, everybody. Let's also just talk about Ofgem. They've announced a 5-year plan to upgrade the energy grid. 28 billion quid. Again, your and my money. And guess what? It's going to be funded by... household energy bills going up. So we have this bizarre scenario where we were told our energy bills were going to go down by 300 quid over the term of this Parliament because of net zero and cleaner energy. Never going to happen.
Yeah. They went up by 300 quid.
And it went up by 300 quid. Now they're taking, was it 100, is it 150?
150 pounds off, so that's still 150
they're taking 150 quid off your bills, but we're going to replace that by it's going to be put on your taxes to pay for it. Now, taxes are more progressive than energy bills, so I actually don't have a problem if we're going to have those extra costs, which I don't think we should, but if we are, it is fairer that I, for instance, should pay more than someone who's on a very low income. I've got no issue with that. But don't pretend you're taking the money off us. We're all going to, well, most of us are going to be paying it anyway, just in a different form. I'll probably be paying more than that because
you just need to give up work and have more children.
Why?
And you get it all for free.
At 57, I think that ship has sailed. Thank the Lord. But now they're saying they're going to put bills up by even more. I think it's another 120 quid. Yeah. It'll be more than that. Simply to pay for this. I mean, you couldn't make it up. 108 quid. You couldn't make it up, except you could make it up because it's entirely predictable.
It's Ed Milliwatt again, who he's been to the Diane Abbott School of Mathematics, I think.
He really has. It's genuinely quite terrifying. But the key thing here is, we're not going to have any more reliable energy.
Oh God, no.
Because they're saying this is going to make they said we're not going to be relying, and Ed Miliband, we don't rely on despots for our energy. We got our energy pretty much entirely now, the external energy from Norway, the US, and Qatar. They're all our allies.
And we've got reserves sitting under the North Sea that mean we didn't need to rely on all of those if we actually used our reserves in the North Sea.
Don't stop me on this. And here's the thing: we wouldn't have to be relying on sort of last-minute high gas bills. They're always saying we can't be reliant on this massively fluctuating gas market. It's not massively fluctuating. It fluctuated because of Ukraine and lockdown. That's it.
And again, this argument that if we pump it out of the North Sea, we'd have to pay the international gas prices and all the rest of it, and it would cost the same. Actually, if you go to Saudi Arabia, you go to Qatar, you go to anywhere else, they don't do that.
They don't pay for energy at all.
And therefore, there are ways around it.
No, absolutely. Look, there's so much more I want to talk about. We're going to take a break, though. We're going to get to your calls. Lots coming in already on those suspended elections. You're as angry about it as we are. Scandalous attempt to subvert democracy is what James Cleverly has called it. And basically, is Keir Starmer running scared of losing yet more elections next year? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:28 is the time. Let's go straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Ian is on the line in the Isle of Wight and wants to talk about those delayed elections.
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Nice to talk
And
to
you, sir.
Sorry, say again?
Yeah, and you, sir, I said. I was being polite for once.
Right. Last year, they cancelled the elections here.
Yep.
What a surprise. Portsmouth, Hampshire, they're all a very strong Labour showing. They know full well they'll lose a lot of seats.
Yep.
So they cancelled them last year, apart from 3 that went ahead due to resignations and what have you. Reform have now got 2 councillors on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
I myself have put my name forward to stand in May next year, only to have the rug pulled out from underneath my feet.
Yeah.
Not only that, but this government has decided that the Isle of Wight doesn't even exist anymore, and they've decided to change our name to Solent.
Oh, that's helpful of them.
Hampshire and Solent, which is a big area of sea.
I was just going to say, I've sailed around the Solent, and I remember it being very much of it was kind of a wet variety rather than a place people could live.
Yes, it is a bit damp. I'll go out there on my boat and I catch fish. There's no people there.
Yeah. Maybe they'll give the fish the votes. Oh, but at 16.
Yeah. I believe that what they are doing now is just one step closer to saying that any form of government, you can only stand for it if you are approved by us.
Yeah.
That's just a step closer to us turning
This is the thing.
North Korea or Russia.
But even if the argument is that, look, they just won't be ready yet, and again, why 2 years? If they genuinely can't organise elections in 2 years, they are so abjectly incompetent on those councils, they shouldn't be in charge of anything.
Oh, no, they shouldn't. I mean, we've got have traditionally had a very strong independent council. I've got a lot of independent groups standing on the council.
That's genuinely a good sign. That's a good, vibrant democracy when people are willing to speak out on the issues that matter to local people.
It does, and we are an island of 140,000 people with very specific issues that we do need to have addressed. But we want to be recognised as a geographical area called the Isle of Wight.
Yep, no, fair enough. Completely understand that. Ian, thank you very much indeed. Well, he's not going to be standing in elections next year. Have to wait a couple more years for them. Michael's in Manchester. Good morning to you, Michael. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. So, one very, very angry person. So, first of all, this is an absolute disgrace. It should be criminal. It should be categorised as criminal what Starmer and his cohorts are trying to do to the democracy of this country. Well, they're not just trying to do, they've achieved a lot of it already. The cancelling of mayoral elections follows on the heels of previous local elections being cancelled. If they were so confident in everything that they were doing, why would they cancel everything?
Well, exactly. This is the thing. If they thought they were going to win these elections, they wouldn't be cancelling them.
Absolutely. Now, I despise Labour, not because they're Labour per se. I despise Labour for what Labour is. They are the most heinous bunch of criminals is the only way.
Well, they're not all. I've got Labour voters in my family. I voted Labour in the past. They're not though.
Well,
I'm not impressed with this government.
The people who are on the front benches, the people who are on the front benches lack any moral clarity whatsoever.
I will agree with you on that. I have to say, this is a bunch of absolute no-hopers. But you say they don't seem to have any principles at all, that's for sure. Michael, I'm going to have to leave it there. I've got to go to a break. Michael in Manchester, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, we're going to talk to Sir James Cleverly. He's the Shadow Local Government Secretary about this. He's already said that he believes this is a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. We'll find out more on his thoughts up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest. Sir James Cleverly, Conservative MP and Shadow Local Government Secretary, joins us right now to talk about those postponed elections in various parts of the country. A very good morning to you, Sir James.
Julia, good morning.
Well, you've been pretty forceful on this. You're not sitting on the fence. A scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. Tell us why you think that.
Well, democracy doesn't exist without elections. And when the party of government... And look, this isn't just a one-off. Regarded that quote, to cancel one set of elections might be regarded as a misfortune. To cancel two sounds like, negligence. People have the right to choose who represents them at local government level, at county government level, at national government level. And when the government now, for the second time in a row, cancels elections, that just stinks. It absolutely stinks. And we are in a period where a lot of people are very cynical about politics, very cynical about politicians, and this will add to that cynicism. Yeah. I love democracy. It can be brutal. We got kicked out of government because of elections. You don't cancel elections just because you don't think you're going to do well. I think this is a big part of what's driving this Labour thinking.
Yeah, well, that's it. No one thinks that if Labour was going to be winning these elections, they would be cancelling them. The thing I find extraordinary, their argument is that, and this is for Essex, Hampshire and the Solent, Sussex and Brighton, and Norfolk and Suffolk, they're going to have their polls pushed back. I mean, not a few months, not a year, but 2 years. And their argument is they need more time to complete their reorganisation. I don't understand why a country which can hold a general election where every single adult in this country was able to vote 2 months after VE Day in 1945 is incapable of organising a local election after a slight reform of the system of local, you know, with layers and tiers of supposed democracy within 2.5 years. I find that pretty worrying.
Well, I just don't believe them, Julia. It's as simple as that. I just don't believe them. They had the opportunity to do the preparatory work before they announced that they were going to have mayoral structures in Sussex, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, Suffolk and Norfolk, and in my county in Essex. It was their choice, the central government's choice, to pursue this timescale. They are the decision maker on this. They are drafting the legislation. They are driving this forward. They're now trying to blame local councils. And I've spoken to my colleagues at the Local Government Association, which is the kind of the trade body for local government. I have spoken to a number of the candidates directly. They were ready.
Yeah.
It would have been a push, but we don't stop doing things just because they're not easy.
Yeah.
This is a combination of arrogance and incompetence by the Labour Party. And I think people have the right to be very angry about it. I'm furious about this. I'm a Democrat at heart, and cancelling elections is not what we do.
No, indeed. And what's interesting, of course, is, I mean, some of these areas, you know, these have been delayed by 3 years. They were supposed to have been held in May this year, so they're actually being delayed by a total of 3 years. Now, it's fascinating. Reform UK have also been very critical. Zia Youssef, the head of policy, said this is a blatant attempt to stop big reform wins next May. It's an act of a desperate government clinging to power by any means necessary. You, representing the Tories, you've been very, very critical. The Liberal Democrats have been critical. The Green Party leader, even Zach Polanski, says, I think it will strike most people as wild that Labour can go knock on doors, realise they're about to lose elections to the Green Party and then delay them for 3 years. I mean, it's quite something to unite Reform, Tories, Lib Dems and Greens against you. Here's the question, though. Were the Tories the party most likely to benefit if those elections had gone ahead?
It doesn't matter. I mean, you don't cancel elections. As I say, you don't cancel elections because they're going to be a tough set of elections. We know that the elections next spring are going to be a really tough set of elections for us. You don't run away from democracy just because it's difficult. And I think what happened is this timescale was put in place by Labour shortly after their general election win, when they thought they ruled the world. Yeah. They thought it was going to be easy. They thought they were going to dominate. And I think that they intended to lock in that advantage at local government level as well as Westminster level. What's happened in the intervening 12, 14 months or so is they have set about alienating the British people at an electrifying pace.
It is quite something. It's got to be said.
It is a historic level of ineptitude. And of course, what's happened now is they're running scared. Now, the point is, we knew at the last general election, we knew we were going to have a bad night at the last general election. We didn't cancel the elections. In fact, Rishi brought those elections forward. We confronted the British people. We took our message to the British people. We weren't successful in that election, but we did the right thing. Labour are running scared, and the British people can see that, and they are angry because democracy is about holding people to account at the ballot box. And if you deny them the opportunity to do that, you set yourself down a very, very, very dangerous path.
We have seen...
I hate this. I hate what they've done.
No. Well, indeed, we've seen numerous U-turns by the government on many issues, largely forced by outcry on Labour benches of MPs. They're not going to have an outcry about losing a load of councils or not winning a load of mayoralties or council seats coming up next May. They're just as worried about this. In fact, the only person they want to lose is Keir Starmer and possibly the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, as well, about this. But, I mean, is there any way that this can be stopped through any mechanism in Parliament?
We don't know yet. We're exploring that. I've been on the phone this morning, as I say, with my friends in local government, with experts at Conservative Central Office, my parliamentary colleagues, my shadow ministers who have got a huge amount of experience in local government. We're trying to see what we can do about this. And the simple truth is, of course, because this is unprecedented. Quite often, with regard to holding the government to account and making sure the government behaves properly, there are well-established procedures, but this is unprecedented. This I mean, they call it delaying for 2 years. It's cancelling elections in all but name. We've not had to deal with this at this scale twice in a row like this.
Yeah.
So we're looking at what we can do. The short answer is I don't know yet, but we're not going to go down without a fight.
Okay, just finally, before I let you go, as a former Foreign Secretary, can I just ask your thoughts on where we are with Ukraine? We've got more talks going on, whether in Moscow or in Florida and White House, wherever. We've got Zelensky touring Europe still. Foreign affairs ministers been meeting in Brussels this week, and the NATO General Secretary sort of singing the praises of the sun god Donald Trump, and he's the man who can make all this happen. But do you see any hope whatsoever that there can be some sort of peace deal that would be acceptable to the Ukrainian people that could be on the table?
Well, in your question, you've hit on absolutely the right point. Whatever the peace deal ultimately is, has got to be acceptable to the Ukrainian people. They are the ones who have put their brothers and sisters and sons and daughters into the firing line. They are the ones. If you go around Ukraine, I've been to Ukraine a number of times as in my role as Foreign Secretary. You see paraplegics everywhere. You see people who have lost limbs because they fought on the front line. Everyone you meet has lost someone close to them in the conflict. They cannot reasonably be asked to sacrifice so much and then to have it all be for nothing. So the Ukrainians have got to be happy with whatever deal it is. We've got to make sure that this cannot, must not, will not happen again. And Vladimir Putin is trying to lock in the gains that he's made through aggression. He cannot be allowed to do so. The NATO Secretary General is right. Donald Trump, the US, is the most powerful player on the pitch and therefore has the most influence. And I really, really hope that President Trump himself and the people around him are coming to realise now that Putin is trying to manipulate everybody, including them, and they must stand firm in their support to Ukraine.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Sir James Cleverly there is Conservative, is Shadow Local Government Secretary, of course, Housing Secretary as well, and of course a former Foreign Secretary. Philip Ingram, could you come back in on Ukraine? We talked so many times about Ukraine. Lots going on at the moment. There's talk about, taking the money that's all been sitting there, that's been basically confiscated in European banks, and then threats from Medvedev, a former president of Russia and a close ally of Putin, that, well, if you confiscate that money, that will mean war. The NATO General Secretary basically it's just constantly just praising Trump, speaking to Trump over the airwaves. So the whole thing here is just they're not trying to win Putin round. They're not trying to win Ukraine round. They're trying to win Trump round, aren't they?
It's to try and stop Trump going down a rabbit hole that is going to be very difficult for the international community to dig itself out of again and make a decision. It's got to the point now where it doesn't matter if the United States almost walks away and does nothing. That would be better than the United States making a decision against Ukraine.
And saying we won't sell any more weapons.
Exactly. Vladimir Putin started this peace process with his 28-point plan because he wanted to stop Tomahawk cruise missiles being given to Ukraine. He wanted to stop the EU from seizing the $300 billion that's in EU banks and get and convince Donald Trump that could be given to him, or a big chunk of it given to him, the United States, knowing full well how to play Donald Trump. He's playing Donald Trump like a master.
Oh yeah, I mean it's actually embarrassing.
It's very embarrassing.
People like Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, just horrified by this and desperately trying to work with the Europeans to get.
He's trying to undo the damage that Witkoff is doing. And what really concerned me was Jared Kushner getting involved as well. Donald Trump's.
Although he's played a blinder in the Middle East, he's much more respected than Witkoff.
Yeah, but this is very different, and the trouble is both of them. It's very difficult to say they don't have other interests from a real estate perspective. If you start to drill into the past of deals that are going on, and therefore they should declare that interest and almost step aside and not get involved with it.
Very interesting. 10:46 is the time. I'd love to get your calls on everything we're talking about today. 0344 499 1000. I think all of us are just absolutely outraged. I mean, if you're uniting the Greens, Lib Dems, Reform and Tories against a Tory policy when it comes to basically delaying for the second time elections in one of our, 4 different areas in our country. Simply, let's utter incompetence and, frankly, an unwillingness to subvert democracy. That is what it is. That is quite telling, is it not? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to talk about, live facial recognition cameras in every village, town and city centre in our country, which apparently is going to keep us all really, really safe, because the police are going to be able to find criminals and arrest them, and then they're going to be charged and go to prison. And that's not brilliant. Oh, by the way, they're not going to face jury trials, obviously, but I mean, everything's going to be fine. It's the answer to all our problems. Yeah. Or is it? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram is also with me, former senior military intelligence officer. Get his thoughts on what our next guest has to say. Roy Rabb is a former commander of specialist operations at New Scotland Yard. Good morning to you, Roy.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, you're joining us today to talk about why the government is basically rolling out live facial recognition cameras. They're planning that for every town centre, town, city, village. That is the plan. Police could be given access to Britain's passport database to catch criminals under the expansion of that technology. It could be deployed across the country. And basically, they'll be allowed to compare photographs of crime suspects from CCTV, from those doorbell cameras and dash cams against facial images on government databases. Of course, 45 million of us have actually got passports. We've got immigration records as well. I mean, it all sounds fine, except we've had CCTV, we've had a lot of this technology for quite a long time. Is there any evidence that it actually results in a cut in crime that would justify the invasion of our right to privacy as we walk down the street?
Well, look, the first thing to say is that I very much doubt that it will ever get rolled out to every village and town across the country. But I think that there's a good argument for it to be rolled out into city centres. Yes, there is evidence that it works. It's worked at large public events like carnivals in identifying drugs dealers and drugs traffickers, violent criminals like the people that maybe stole your telephone on one.
My bag, yeah. Although they know who he is, they know his address, they just don't bother arresting him.
Well, if he pops up on one of these cameras in the street, perhaps he will be arrested. But I think, it's an intelligence tool. At the moment, police use these officers who are called super identifiers.
Yeah.
Who go to these events. This is just a better way of doing it. It's more reliable.
So basically it's cameras. I mean, I've seen them on Oxford Street and I've been out there and they've got these cameras and they've got lots of, about 12 police officers hanging around, frankly, doing nothing. And they're just scanning every face in the crowd. I mean, the only thing that I thought was, well, if I was a criminal and I knew I was wanted, probably wouldn't walk past that van. Might just think that was a bad idea.
Yeah, you're probably right. Because at the moment they are quite unusual to see the van there and a big sign saying it's facial recognition. But I think once they're embedded in the system and integrated with other CCTV cameras, people will forget. And there are plenty of these guys.
That's the trouble. People will forget. But here's the thing. And we know people like Big Brother Watch who've been, frankly, right about everything so far. And I was not that concerned about civil liberties before what happened with the lockdown and the like. But they've been absolutely bang on the money in terms of the surveillance state that we are now living in. And when we had, the urge to have us to have vaccine passports and the like, that actually very, very sinister. This can be used by, not a hostile nation state against us, or I'm no doubt at all China will hack in straight away, so will Russia, but it can be used by a democratically elected government that chooses to sort of prioritise, quote, our safety, quote, over our freedom and our right to walk down the sodding street without being monitored.
And walk down the sodding street without being mugged either.
But it doesn't have to be either or, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't have to be either or, and that's why it's really important for politicians to get it right in terms of the controls around this thing. I would never ever be somebody who supported this kind of level of surveillance everywhere. It's unjustified and it's not necessary.
And it doesn't work. We've got apart from Singapore and China, we've got the most CCTV cameras in the world. We have a sky-high criminal rate at the moment.
Well, but they do work if they're integrated properly into a criminal justice system that works. But, I've said there are some fundamental flaws in the justice system. It's all very well kind of bolting these things on at times, but what we need is a full holistic review of the system. What part policing plays, what part technology plays, what part the courts play. It's a much bigger question than just, should we bung a camera up here and there?
Yeah.
But let's not forget that criminals are exploiting technology all the time. Cybercrime, hacking our cars, hacking everything. They're using technology. We need to use technology to keep ourselves safe.
Yeah.
Some big brothers can be quite benign.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, can we start with, getting police officers when they take a witness statement, not doing it in longhand and then going away and typing it up with two fingers? I mean, and then sending it back to you to be... I mean, so that would be a good... Let's get into the 20th century at least, rather than 21st century first. That would be a good start. Look, I'm not against us using this technology if I knew there were safeguards. I just don't trust the government or any government of any political hue to not allow this to expand.
I kind of detect a note of cynicism in you sometimes.
Really? Sometimes, only the sometimes. It's just from bitter experience. Bearing in mind, I did have a formal apology from the Chief Counsel to the Cabinet Office after they monitored what I was saying online, I mean, which was publicly available about lockdown policies and vaccine passports and things during lockdown, and then sent it to a counter-terrorism unit in the United States. I mean, funnily enough, as somebody who's like a law-abiding citizen who's always believed in, the state and everything, I'm a little bit more wary now.
Yeah, and I think we're all entitled to be a bit more wary, but I keep coming back to this point. It's no good kind of bolting bits on here and there.
Yeah.
There needs to be this more holistic approach to we deserve to be kept safe. We deserve to have a well-informed, well-equipped police service that delivers the kind of policing that we want to see.
Yeah, and as you say, there's no point if it needs to be joined onto a functioning criminal justice system. We know how unfunctioning that is right now. Lots of conversation about jury trials and the long delays. But again, if someone, it's like with shops, they say, okay, well, we've got this guy, we've got his name, his address, we've got him on camera, we've got everything, and the police turn up. They either don't arrest, they don't do anything. If they do actually arrest and charge, CPS doesn't prosecute, or it doesn't go to court for a very long time, and then he gets a slap on the wrist, or he gets sent to jail, and he comes out after about 3 minutes. And what's the sodding point of any of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, but we can't abandon it, can we?
No, but I think that's what a lot of people feel.
I've encountered it with victims of crime way back in my service days, and with family who've had problems. There is a lack of trust in it overall. Yeah. People waiting 4 or 5 years to see the outcome of a trial is not good.
No, absolutely. Always good to talk to you, Roy Ram, former commander of Specialist Operations at New Scotland Yard. Well, he's quite in favour of this, Philip Ingram. You're a former senior military intelligence officer. Look, I'm all for police using more technology and more intelligence, but it's the action afterwards that matters, isn't it?
No, it's across the board, because you can't have an action afterwards if you can't identify the people that you want to have that action with. And I'm in favour of it as well, because it's effectively putting more bobbies on the ground. It's putting more eyes so that you can take the very overworked physical police officers and target them in the right places and give them what they need to then reduce that amount of paperwork and actually get people into prosecution.
How does that work? Because basically you need to have an idea of who a suspect is to be able to cross-reference.
Exactly, and if it's cross-referenced, if you've got them on the database that's in there, it will have all the potential crimes that they committed beforehand.
And then you arrest them there and then.
And you just hit print, and that gives you your evidence.
I mean, you could have just gone to their home.
Well, yes, but
if you cross-reference against their passport, you've probably got a home address in there.
But a lot of these criminals will move around an awful lot, and they're not there. And you talk about nation states. If we've got Chinese cameras, and a lot of our local authorities have got Chinese cameras, they are feeding back into databases that have been data storage that have been sold with the package. Yep. Those servers are based in continental China. China's already running AI software and facial recognition software against that, and monitoring what you're doing and everything else, and using that to target their secret police into different things. The government has got the Protection of Freedoms Act in England and Wales that should have had the Surveillance Camera Commissioner overseeing it, but that post has been disbanded.
I'm just going to want a lot of protections in this. I really am. But, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Give us a call. And, of course, yours. Lots more calls coming in about the government basically subverting democracy by delaying elections yet again. We can do it after a world war, but not after a little reform of local councils. Tell us what you think. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Welcome back if you've already been joining us. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, if you miss anything on the show, we're here all the way till 1 o'clock. You can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to talk more about Labour being accused of a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. Who said that? Well, James Cleverly. He was just on the show. This is after it was revealed that 4 mayoral elections scheduled for May next year are set to be postponed by a whopping 2 years. And some of these areas, they'd already been postponed elections before, pushed back from earlier this year. The Reform UK called it a blatant attempt to stop big wins for the party. And can we explain it any other way? Your thoughts on that? Absolutely welcome. Plus, Wes Streeting has ordered an independent review of the diagnosis of mental health conditions. So Labour seeks, apparently we're told, a crackdown on welfare spending, except they've just added an extra £16 billion to the welfare bill. The Health Secretary says he is concerned about overdiagnosis of mental illness, of autism, ADHD, which have become the most common reasons for a sickness benefit claim. And those benefit claims are going sky high. 4.4 million working age people right now claiming disability or incapacity benefit, a rise of 1.2 million since 2019. Those figures just simply do not add up, other than to a massive whopping tax cost for the rest of us. Meanwhile, A&E departments are under siege by patients with hiccups, ingrown toenails and blocked noses, according to health officials. Of course, they're required to sort of triage at least and treat anyone who turns up. Well, maybe we need to stop that. That comes as we hear the latest figures on, the flu that is hitting patients this year. The number of patients in England's hospitals in the NHS is now topping 1,700, and that's up 56% on last year. Well, we all knew, didn't we? If you basically lock everyone in their homes for the best part of 2 years, and particularly not the older people who are going to be affected by flu, and they're not getting all the local bugs, and that bug has been suppressed by COVID because the dominant bug is the one that's around, they will come back with a vengeance. And everybody was predicting this would happen for the next few years, and that's why I have a semi-permanent rotten cold and cough, and that's why the flu bug is hitting so many of us as well. Not a surprise. Plus, we're also going to talk about why it's not a surprise. Our household energy bills are going to rise to help fund a £28 billion investment in the UK's energy network. This is to strengthen our electricity transmission network, so a load of ugly pylons to match all the ugly wind turbines, so we can strengthen how we can get electricity around the country. You and I are going to have to pay an additional £108 on our energy bills by 2031. I can guarantee to you it will be more than that. Government said that our energy bills would go down by £300 by 2030. They've already gone up by more than that, and we've taken 150 off in the budget, but that's going to be put on our taxes, and now we're going to get another 108. They're taking the mick, guys. They're taking the mick. Net zero is never going to lead to cheaper energy, more reliable energy, or more plentiful energy. It's only going to put the bills up. I've been telling you this for years. Listen to Auntie Julia. She knows more than Ed Miliband about this. Trust me. Mind you, I have a guinea pig that died 10 years ago that also knows more about this than Ed Miliband. Just saying. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about, but in particular that postponement of 4 mayoral elections until, wait for it, 2028. That's after 9 areas saw local elections cancelled earlier this year. Now, the government's been accused of a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. What do you reckon it is? Because is it just incompetence? Is it incompetence or subverting democracy? All of the above? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Send a text to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. Philip Ingram, MBE, is still with us. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. Thank you once again for joining us.
Good morning again.
You and I, we ain't convinced that this is a move by the government, sort of, to make sure that elections go ahead in a very sensible fashion, postponing 4 mayoral elections by 2 years. I mean, Essex is one area, Hampshire and Solent is the other. We already had a call from Ian in the Isle of Wight going, so Solent is the sea, we're the Isle of Wight. Sussex and Brighton is the other area, and Norfolk and Suffolk as one area. They're combined authorities, and they're supposed to be having mayors for their combined authorities. They were supposed to be held, well, a lot of this was supposed to be done last year, well, earlier this year, but was postponed by Angela Rayner. Remember her? I wonder what she's doing now. And now they've been pushed back by another 2 years from when they were supposed to be held in May next year. Now, the general view is that this is because Labour expect to do very badly in these local elections, as they will in local elections in England, the regional elections, the parliamentary elections in Scotland, and indeed the Assembly elections in Wales. And they're just trying to cut down the damage they're going to get. But I mean, is there any other reasonable explanation for this? No. Other than subverting of democracy?
No, none. The music score that's running underneath the speech that's going to come out from the Minister on Thursday, I believe it is going to be called Running Scared.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Well, yeah, they're going to officially announce it today, but it's already come out. I mean, they're saying this is on the grounds that councils need more time to complete their reorganisation. How long do you need to do this? I mean, really, this is... I mean, I'm sorry, I think you could reorganise an entire country. I pointed out earlier, the fact that we had a 5-year world war, 1939 to 1945, I mean, proper, full-on, 6 years, right? Full-on war, which, so many of the men were conscripted and were away. The whole war effort, the whole country turned to this sole war effort. VE Day on the 8th of May, 1945. 2 months later, we were able to hold a general election across this country and elect a new government. But it's going to take them 2.5 years to do it for a local council election. Give me a break.
Yeah, well, researching a technology that you need to get self-spoiling ballot papers, unless it's just the Labour box that's ticked. That's probably what they need.
But this is the thing. This is the party that would castigate Donald Trump over, vote-fixing claims and all that, and he was wrong about that. I mean, this, I'm sorry, don't...
They've castigated everyone about everything,
syndrome.
Apart from...
They're so waggy finger and judgy. Yeah. This is so blatant. You'd think they'd understand that how bad it would look, even if they were going, look, this is all a bit incompetent. But seriously, if you have officials in this reorganisation of government who can't get their act together enough to get this sorted in a few years' time, those people have no business being employed doing... I mean, I don't want these people even emptying the bins.
Yeah, but you've got a team where, at PMQ's Prime Minister's Questions this week, Keir Starmer stood up and talked about the 22 billion black hole that he inherited, when one of his team a few days beforehand had said that actually they'd come into government with a 10 billion surplus. Yeah. So he's still banging on about something that has been proven to be wrong by his own team. Think through this and think through... He doesn't think through anything.
But look, the thing is losing... I don't think Labour were going to win in any of these. It's interesting to hear from James Cleverly, the Conservative, on this, talking about this scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. Unlikely that the Tories would have done well. They're expecting terrible election results in May as well. I mean, Reform is likely to be the big winners. Possibly the Greens, the Greens, the Lib Dems, Tories and Reform all united on this. But would not having another 4 local elections where Labour have done badly, would that be the difference between Labour and Keir Starmer surviving or not? I mean, no.
I've got a theory behind this. Yes, it would make a difference, because what it would do is it would tell all those constituency MPs whether they're going to be one-shot wonders or not. In
all the different areas.
From May this year. And if they thought they were only going to be one-shot wonders, then they're all going to go out and try and do their own agendas. And
nothing to lose.
Correct. And all of a sudden he would have this backbench that he's now trying to forcibly corral to get votes through, would be going off in so many different directions, he'd lose everything. And then there could be a vote of no confidence in the government much quicker than the next general election, when the next general election is due, and he could be thrown out himself much earlier.
That is interesting. Well, it's interesting actually. We've already seen lots of rebellions on. Interestingly, as Chebby Badenoch at PMQs yesterday pointed out, 7 MPs lost the Labour whip last year for voting against voting for an opposition amendment to basically scrap the two-child benefit cap, and now it's become his moral, political, and national, moral mission. Yeah. But it is interesting. Also, he's had rebellions on many different issues, on welfare and everything else. But crucially, also interesting in that sort of area, Marcus Campbell Savers. who represents the rural constituency of Perth and Solway. He voted against a measure to basically bring in this inheritance tax on family farms. And he's lost the whip. Another 30 Labour MPs decided to abstain, which I think is very interesting. They're just saying, he's basically saying, I can't go back to my constituents and go against something which I told them we wouldn't do, which is great. I'm a big fan of MPs standing by their manifestos.
He's showing moral courage.
Yeah, but he's lost the Labour whip, but he knows he ain't got a chance if he does vote with the government. So he's basically, at the end of the day, I do think there are a lot of politicians who are actually quite moral and want to do the right thing. I don't think they're all ghastly scoundrels. That's not my experience, the people I've met. However, most MPs, when push comes to shove, will try and save their jobs, whether by supporting a government or supporting a leader or by abandoning them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go. So you think actually this is another way of just making sure you've got some areas that don't have a clear message from the electorate, we don't want Labour anymore.
Well, exactly, and therefore it's trying to keep his backbenchers together rather than it affecting the local elections.
Very interesting. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Lots of calls already coming in. You are not happy about this, understandably. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Let's also get back to West Street, the Health Secretary ordering an inquiry into mental health overdiagnosis, ADHD, autism, anxiety, you name it. He has basically ordered a report to be done by next year. It's good that it's only going to be short. That's good to hear. But he says basically he's getting Professor Peter Fonagy. He's a clinical psychologist at University College London, specialising in child mental health, to lead the review. Got a former president of the Royal College of Psychiatry as the vice chair. That's Sir Simon Wesley. These people must know what they're doing. Got more than 500,000 people are on ADHD waiting list. 800,000 in England have been diagnosed with ADHD. But the NHS says the condition remains underdiagnosed and is likely to affect 2.5 million people in total. But here's the thing. Affecting you and actually meaning that you can't work or needing benefits or needing other help for your home to be adjusted or something, those are very different things.
Yes.
Because, and again, we know more boys have a lot of these issues than girls because they're more likely to be at the extreme ends of the spectrum. But as you were talking earlier, we're all on this spectrum of, even down to, there's, people getting diagnosed with dyspraxia, which is basically being clumsy. I'm pretty clumsy. I am perfectly capable of walking through an otherwise empty room and there being a chair on the way. I'm perfectly capable of bumping into that chair. It's largely not, I have quite a lot of bruises on my legs quite often, but it's largely not hampered me going through life, and I don't need benefits as a result. And it's amazing. I've met people whose children, they're diagnosed with, dyslexia, dyspraxia, was it dyscalculus or whatever. Maybe they're just an average kid. They're not just a brilliant student, and they're a bit clumsy. That doesn't mean you've got a mental health problem.
Correct, and we overlabel things, and then normal is a spectrum, and that translates then into people getting benefits or getting advantages where they don't need advantages. And I know some people who are way off on the spectrum and are doing extremely well for themselves. I've never been diagnosed.
High performing, high functioning autism.
Very high functioning.
You look at someone like Elon Musk. He's clearly on a spectrum somewhere. It's worked out all right for him.
It's worked all right. Yeah, he's done all right for himself. I bet his mum's proud that he can afford a birthday present for her every now and again.
Every now and again, yeah.
Exactly. A bunch of flowers on Mother's Day.
But again, as we were discussing earlier, the important thing is, there are people who genuinely do need help, both children and adults, and they need help for their daily lives, or they cannot work at all, or help in school, and they're not getting it because if 10 kids in the class of 30 say they've got a problem, rather than the 2. Probably even less than that.
You can't concentrate your resources on those few that really need it, and that's where it's letting the world down. And costing the taxpayers.
That's the thing. People, if you want to have a conversation about this, people go, "Oh, don't you care about those people?" Say, "Yes, I do." But I care about the ones who really need it. Who really need it, and we know that actually the kids who really need it and the adults who really need it often not getting it. I'm always fascinated. It's a big celebrity thing now when they're not having trans children, or being non-binary. They keep telling us they're being diagnosed. I finally had my autism or my ADHD diagnosis. You think, well, why? What's the point? I've got answers for things. Okay, fine, but What's that going to do? What
makes no difference whatsoever. You know, I look at a sentence and different words that are in there. I can't work out how to pronounce the words because the letters are all jumbled up. They're simple words.
Yeah.
No, I could be. I don't know. I've never gone on. I've no interest in going and getting a label on it. I just know that's there.
But
and
even with
I
things
deal
like
with it.
dyslexia, they found out, the treatment for the children who were basically illiterate because they hadn't been taught properly, hadn't paid attention in class, and the children who were dyslexic was, apart from the very most severest forms of it, was the same, which was some one-on-one, really, really focused teaching with them. And in so many of these cases, I mean, again, there's really interesting evidence that in terms of autism, now everyone's got autism now. Someone just doesn't look in the eye. They've got autism. I mean, and again, that's a massive spectrum of behaviours and needs or lack of needs. But actually, the number of people who are getting diagnosed as a proportion of the population with severe autism, that massively affects their ability to function in daily life, that has not gone up. But there's a massive explosion in people with mild autism. And what that would tell you, because if it was just that it was being underdiagnosed and we need to diagnose it more, you would have seen more of the severe kinds. And we're not seeing more of it.
There's a bigger issue here as well, and Wes Streeting's investigation might get into that because over the last 10, 20, 30 years, the general age that couples have children, and you need a couple, a man and a woman, to have a child, has gone up. And they're finding that is affecting that is affecting the genetics in the egg and the sperm that come together, and therefore that could be leading to it. So it's important to understand that and get things in place. But it doesn't automatically mean it doesn't.
I think there's a lot of people who are poor who are wanting to get a lot of benefits for their kids, and there are a lot of middle class parents who want to game the system for their kids and get extra time in exams. And I'm sorry, and you're all deeply immoral because you're actually stopping the kids who really need it, and actually what your kids need is just a bit more. Perhaps love, attention, routine. You know what? If you want to be take your kid to the park and kick a ball with them, for the love of God. Do some proper parenting, people. I think this is a really big issue. So we can focus on the people. I'm not in any way saying there aren't people with these issues need help, but we would like to help those people. Here's the thing: do you have any faith that Wes Streeting, who apparently thinks that there is something called trans children and they need to have puberty blockers because he's allowing that trial? Well, I mean, that's a mental health problem. That's not a real thing, but, so I've got very big issues there. Do we genuinely think that he's going to do anything about it? Because at the end of the day, if you can't cut any benefits at all, and when you say you're having welfare reform from Prime Minister, you've actually spent an extra 16 billion allowing more people to swing the lead, and you're giving parents who don't make right choices about how many children to have and don't go out to work full-time, both of them, and then need us to give them an extra $3,500 per kid on the universal credit child benefit. I'm sorry. Do we have any expectation at all that they'll go, right, it's being overdiagnosed, we are now going to stop the benefits to the people who've been overdiagnosed?
I've got a very long...
Don't believe for a nanosecond.
I've got a very long and intellectual answer to that. No.
There we go. This is why we have him on. Let's also talk about those live facial recognition cameras. We spoke about those the last half hour, planned for every town centre. Now, you were telling me an interesting story in the news break about them already. I mean, we've already got a lot of these cameras in shops. We have.
In shops, in hospitality, in our petrol station forecourts and all the rest of it. There's a company called FaceWatch has been rolling them out across the board. They're controlled by those commercial entities. And if you look at the statistics of where they put them out, and this is indicative of what we'll likely see elsewhere, there has been a 35% reduction in theft. There's been a 24% reduction in overall crime. And the really important one, I think, is a 17% reduction in violence against staff in retail and hospitality premises and all the rest of it. So it's clear they do work because the criminals then go to somewhere else where they're not there.
So they work in those stores, but that's the same thing about, why can't Waitrose and Tesco and Sainsbury's pay for their security guards? Well, fine. So people then don't shop from shoplift from those stores, but then they go to the little shop down the road that can't afford a security guard.
The reason why you put an alarm on your house,
burgle over there,
is to go.
Don't burgle me, burgle over there.
And therefore, what this is doing.
When you say it works, what do you mean? It works because they go and shoplift or burgle from somewhere else.
Well,
but that doesn't mean it's working. It just means someone else is the victim.
It's also resulting in where the criminals do go into these places, an awful lot more crime been taken to the courts and individuals being prosecuted. But if you then that's somewhere else, if you reduce that ability to go somewhere else by having it in the public spaces that are in between the shops, where it can be identified and the police can then go in and deal with them, then that's putting more bobbies on the beach.
In my local high street, and my God, I've spoken to a lot of, I've lived there for a long time, spoken to an awful lot of the shopkeepers about that. They say there's no issue with knowing who the shoplifters are. They know, they literally have the door, they have someone standing on the door ready to close the door when they know the people are coming in because they know the police won't arrest. They have had the people in the store. They've literally got their wallets. They've got their identity. They know their names, their addresses, and the police do nothing. Now, they say they're doing more now, but they're not doing much more. They know who the people are already. They're just not prosecuting them.
It is, but to do it now, you to have that evidence, the police then need to get it. They then need to go and get a warrant from a judge, and this is all paperwork filling in and all that. That warrant then needs to go and they put a team together. They then get a briefing. They then go to the front door and try and arrest the individual. The individual isn't there because they've moved around, so they have to go away and repeat and rinse and repeat. Whereas if this
do police work? How dare we ask them to do police work?
Whereas if you have this facial recognition software, if you've got an individual walking down the high street and is there, and you've got Bobby around the corner, Bobby can go and nick him without doing all that other stuff beforehand. You're saving huge amounts of police time.
It's a good excuse for police just standing around the street corners doing not very little, if you ask me.
There aren't enough police to stand around the street corners.
Well, I saw it in Oxford Street some months back. Genuinely, there were 12 police officers there, and I'm going, is this a good use of your resources, gentlemen? And that was the view that it was not. I want to squeeze in one more topic. We've had all these protests against asylum hotels, although, again, I'm not entirely sure getting all these illegal migrant arrivals out of hotels and putting them in local hostels and in the house next door to you is perhaps the solution, because that's what they're going to do. But we've also had the government say they're going to get them out of hotels, they're going to put them into camps. Of course, when we say we want them in camps, what we mean is camps that are completely sealed up so that they can't get out.
Armed guards.
That's not what they mean.
Exactly.
And we've had these protests, of course, out in Epping and in Wapping and goodness knows where, but also, crucially, in Crowborough in East Sussex, where we've had, thousands turned out at the weekend. Yet again, many demonstrations they've had about turning that camp into accommodation for asylum-seeking men by the end of this month. And on Wednesday night, the town's number 8 detachment of cadets paraded for the last time at the camp. It was previously used by the British and Canadian military during the First and Second World Wars. But the cadets have now been ordered to leave their training camp. So it's not like it's an abandoned camp. In order to leave it, to make way for 600 small boat migrants. And the argument given by the Ministry of Defence is because the government takes the safety and well-being of all cadets extremely seriously. And as the leader of the Pink Ladies anti-migrant group in Crowborough said, these are the protesters, this is Jeanette Towie, it's a terrible shame and appalling indictment of the government that our cadets are being forced out of their long-standing base to make way for 600 undocumented fighting-age men that we know nothing about. If the MOD thinks it's unsafe for cadets, how come the Home Office thinks it's safe for exactly the same children if they're in the town? It's a fair question.
Very fair question. I know that camp well. I've stayed there before when I was a cadet. And you're moving the cadets to somewhere else isn't really going to affect the cadets. They'll be given somewhere else to go to. But it's that bit of the Ministry of Defence saying it's unsafe for children to be around these individuals.
These are teenagers, basically.
12 up, to be around these undocumented fighting-age men. I
wonder why.
And the camp is in a quiet little village, and therefore the impact that's going to have on
it's not
the village.
It's not in the middle of nowhere. It's right next to a tiny little village. Well, we're going to be speaking to someone who's campaigning against that coming up later in the show. 11:25 is the time. We're going to take a break. Going to get to your calls coming in on that overdiagnosis of things like ADHD, and also on the trampling of democracy by this government cancelling and delaying yet more elections. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000 if you want to have your say. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:29 is the time. Coming up just a few moments, we're going to be talking about A&E under siege, those flu numbers, and also, of course, will that investigation, that inquiry into overdiagnosis of mental health problems actually make any difference if, as we know, it will conclude that there is overdiagnosis. First up, though, let's take more of your calls. 0344 499 1000. Herbie's on the line in Harrow. And Herbie, you want to talk about those 4 mayoral elections that have been postponed all the way to 2028.
What a disgraceful situation. Believe you me, I cannot understand where this government's coming from. Are they denying people, the electorate, the choice of people who they want to run the country? I don't know if it's just the mayoral elections or is it going to be the local elections as well. Are we sure of which ones they are?
I think it's just the mayoral elections. I don't think so far.
Well, I'll be sure of that because they cancelled the local elections last year. Certainly in where I'm going to hopefully stand, and it's going to be again another 2 years of denying the people the choice of who they want to run.
But again, it's just untenable to think that this reorganisation of local democracy means a 2.5 year delay. I mean, that's a joke.
Oh, it's unbelievable. What's the reason for it? They need to be at what point do they need to extend it to 2 years? Why don't they be truthful with the electorate to say we are afraid to run the elections because we know we're going to get a hammering and we don't want that? You know, why don't they be honest about it? They know they're unpopular, but they're going to be more unpopular by doing this.
I love the fact they think they might be more popular by 2028. Good luck with that. We shall see, Herbie. I completely agree with you. Thank you very much indeed, mate. Carl's on the line in Luton. Carl, you want to talk about this inquiry into whether or not we're overdiagnosing autism, ADHD and other mental health problems?
Yes. It's not the overdiagnosis that gets me. It's the fact that everybody who gets diagnosed gets benefit. My granddaughter's been diagnosed, and in the old days, we'd have called her a naughty child. I mean... I find her really funny because my son's got to put up with it.
Yeah,
but
you dip in and out as granddad, give us some chocolate and then laugh. Yeah,
but she does need a little bit of help at school. She has got it, but why does my son need £400 a month?
Oh wow! How do you mind me asking? Do you mind me asking how old she is and what sort of how it shows itself?
She's 7.
Yeah.
She has a habit of laying on the floor at school. Her mum will get her ready for school and she'll just, while her mum's back's turned, she'll just take all her clothes off and go, I don't want to go today.
No.
She's a pain in the butt at times.
But how do they know that's ADHD as opposed to a sort of a kid that's just being difficult?
She has been properly diagnosed. She doesn't like noise. So she's definitely on the spectrum.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
do you think that it could be managed better?
No, I think my son and his partner manage very well.
They do well. But why? Yeah, not quite sure why having that kid means an extra £400 a month.
Yeah, they're not spending extra money.
No, there's no. They don't need extra equipment or a different car or
No. She needs a little bit of help at school. That's the main reason they got her diagnosed.
But the school provide that.
only if you get a diagnosis.
Yeah, but I'm saying they're not paying for that extra help. That's not going on therapy. So we're all being taxed more to give your son and daughter-in-law an extra 400 quid that they don't actually need.
Exactly. And how many times is that going on?
Well, judging by the figures, an awful lot. I think we've found that black hole that Rachel Reeves keeps yapping on about.
But it's many things. I mean, you can get diagnosed with a disability benefit and get £400 a month, and you don't need the extra money. You still go to work, you still crack on.
Does that money just magically appear in your son's or your daughter-in-law's bank account? Do they have to apply for it? And have you said to them, why are you getting this money when you don't need it?
I asked him why he's getting the money and they don't need it, and he said, because they'll give it to me.
And a lot of people might well say that, mightn't they? But yeah, very interesting. Carl, appreciate that call. Appreciate the honesty. Hope it doesn't ruin Christmas Day when they find out you've called us, right? Because you were very positive about their parenting and how much you love your granddaughter. Just to reiterate that for everyone. Very interesting, Philip Ingram, to hear that, though. Again, this is my thing. Everyone goes, oh, the lefties will go, oh, this is all awful, this is awful. Everyone I know knows someone who has a family member like that.
But we look at the example that's being set at the very top, and look at the scandal that there was over the freebies going to Keir Starmer and all his top team from Lord Ali and everyone else. That translates into people at the ordinary level. If they find that the rules allow them to claim for something, they're going to claim for it.
Everyone else is.
Yeah,
I may as well do it. Yeah, exactly. 11:34 is the time. Next, we take a quick break. Then we're going to talk to Roy Lilly about what is going on with those mental health diagnoses and how much pressure is the NHS under, especially with flu this winter. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. Let's talk to Roy Lilly. He's a former NHS Trust chairman and joins us. Morning to you, Roy.
Good morning, Julie.
Thank you for joining us. There's lots to talk to you about. First of all, what do you make of Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, ordering a big review by some top experts over the next wants to get the results back in the by next summer? Basically, are we overdiagnosing things like ADHD, autism, anxiety, and what can we do about it? Are you hopeful that might actually lead to some more sense in the system?
Yes, I'm going to say something now that I don't think you ever thought you'd hear me say, and that is I agree with Wes. I think he's doing the right thing. I mean, I had a quick look before I came on at the international numbers, and the diagnosis in the UK is about 1.3% of people have a formal diagnosis. In the United States, it's pushing 10%. Canada at 7.5%, and Sweden is 3%.
Yeah.
I think my impression here is that we don't really know what's going on, and that's why Sir Simon Wesley, former president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, a very sound guy. In my view, I've sort of known him for a few years. I think they will get to the bottom of it. Some of it is about in poorer areas. It's interesting, in poor areas, in higher social deprivation, the numbers aren't as high as you would expect them to be, and that's because the NHS coverage, the number of GPs per head of population, is lower in those areas. So there is a risk that the diagnosis is less. In a more affluent, nicer areas to live, Leafy, Surrey, things like that, the diagnosis is higher. You can say, well, that's because of the families pushing. Or you could say, well, actually, there are more GPs per head of population and they're likely to get a better diagnosis earlier. And if you look at the international data, there is a real link that data is poorer and services are thinner in low-income countries because the services are poorer. So I think looking at it from the outside, I would expect the report to make a correlation between access to diagnosis.
Okay, there's access to diagnosis, but again, we are still diagnosing off the scale compared to a lot of other countries at the moment.
No.
So we are after 20. We've had a massive increase since 2019 of people being diagnosed with some very mild mental health problems, and a lot of people say, well, there was lockdown, but that hasn't happened in other countries where there has been lockdown.
There is a pattern right across the OECD countries of an increase in these kind of diagnoses, and the numbers are up. But again, there's very poor data. I mean, NHS services, certainly in the NHS and probably more widely, have always been the Cinderella services, really. A new hip, bouncing baby is what the NHS is all about, but someone with deep depression and schizophrenia really hard to manage. That's not the attractive
but here's the thing, as we know, because severe mental health problems are a really big serious issue and need to be treated seriously, and they need all the help, and it can often be very expensive, but we can't channel resources into that if half the class or half a cohort of young people have got supposedly a mental health problem. We've got kids who are being diagnosed like, I've got anxiety, I can't leave the house, I can't work. We've got kids being diagnosed with ADHD, some of whom, frankly, are playing a Game Boy up till Xbox till 3 in the morning and being given a Lucozade bottle for breakfast. It's not a mystery. And then you've got the kids who are genuinely on the spectrum, who genuinely need help, and children and youngsters who've got genuine health problems, mental health problems. Then they're getting missed by the system because of all the other people around them whose parents are either gaming the system to get benefits or to get their kids extra time in exams, or who frankly are just medicalising normal human differences and normal human emotions.
Which is why I agree with Wes. We need to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. The question is, if they get to the bottom of it, will they do anything about it?
Well, I think if it looks like it's going to cut benefits, they will. If it looks like it's going to put the cost of treatment up in the NHS, they won't.
Yeah, there is that. Well, again, I don't believe for a moment they're actually going to act on it because Labour backbenchers won't let them. Let's talk about what's going on in A&E right now. And anyone who's had to go to A&E will know that, even on a sort of a Thursday morning, it's often absolutely packed. But A&E departments are under siege, health officials have said, by patients with, nonsense claims like hiccups, ingrown toenails, blocked noses. More than 200,000 A&E cases last winter could have been dealt with elsewhere. Almost 100,000 people with just things like sore throats. And yet, they're currently under siege with the number of flu patients. It's up more than 50% on last year, with 1,717 patients in beds in England each day last week, including 69 in critical care. We are approaching, the full-on winter crisis, which follows on from the autumn crisis and the summer crisis and the spring crisis and last year's winter crisis. But we do still have this issue of people turning up to A&E who don't need to be there, partly because they can't get to see a GP, or the GPs, won't give them an appointment within 2 weeks' time, but partly also because they know they have to be seen. Do we need to stop the situation where doctors have to see someone in A&E so they can be triaged and be told, no, go home, you're wasting people's time?
Well, they do that. I mean, these trivial things that we're talking about this morning, I mean, they make good copy in the newspapers, and yes, it does happen. But, you know, the A&Es are staffed by very sensible, experienced people, and they're not stupid. And somebody comes in with an ingrowing toenail, or in the case of the hiccups, you know, they just burst a paper bag behind their back and give them a shock and send them home without the hiccups. You know, they're pretty good at sorting the wheat from the chaff. It's annoying, but they sort it out. So that's not a big issue. What is a worrying issue is what is happening to the flu.
Yeah.
If you want to know what's going to happen with the flu, you have to look to Australia, because generally speaking, we follow what's happened with them. They've had a very early flu season, and it's been horrendous. And they've had, you know, pictures of people in corridors and all the kind of problems that we've had here. So yes, there is a problem with the flu. If you can get a flu jab, get it. If you've got to pay for it, it's worth it, because this is a very nasty strain of flu, and it is causing lots of what we call exacerbations. That means making existing conditions worse. And that generally means older people. That generally means a couple of nights in hospital. And that generally means getting them out and getting their care package reinstated as a palaver. So yes, it's a problem.
It's a big. I think we know flu, like COVID, affects elderly people, but unlike COVID, actually, it could also affect younger children as well.
Absolutely,
and that can be a particular issue.
And we got 14,000 people in hospital with COVID now.
Yeah.
So, you know, COVID hasn't gone away. And for some people, it can be...
Are they being treated for COVID, or are they just being randomly tested for COVID?
No, they've been treated and they've been admitted with, you know, with a lot of breathing difficulties.
For COVID.
The key number of people, the key people that we're not jabbing, and I think everybody should have a flu jab, to be honest.
I've never had a flu jab. Never even occurred to me to get a flu jab.
Yeah,
I mean, that said, I was largely very healthy until 2020.
Yeah, well, there you go. But I mean, I'd make it easy for employers to buy the flu jabs and do it for their staff and stuff like that. The issue here is there's a particular group. It's a sort of the dads between 30 and up to about 55. They don't get a jab quite often, and they are big spreaders. You know, they pick it up at work, or the kids give it to them, and then they give it to their older parents and all the rest of it. There's that cohort that I always think that public health overlook, and I think they are.
And does the flu jab stop you from passing it on? Because remember, we were told that COVID, if you had the COVID jab, that's the reason I had one of the main reasons I had it was although I'd already had COVID, I wasn't worried about COVID myself, but it would stop me from being able to catch it and pass it on to an elderly relative. That wasn't the case, but
it's not a magic solution. But what it does mean is if you do pick up the flu, you'll be less ill, and there'll be less chances of you passing on something that's really horrible and will do a lot of damage. I think it just makes a lot of sense. I'm of the age now where they give me a free everything, you know, so I'm the walking dartboard. They come in, they say 180s just walk through the door, so I get all the jabs.
Well, maybe I'm on my way. Maybe I should start doing that. I don't know. But again, we do have the NHS. It always moans and freaks out about every winter. Is it particularly worse? Because we were warned, weren't we, that, you know, the suppression of flu by COVID, because the COVID bug was so virus was so strong, and it basically suppressed a lot of the other diseases. And then, of course, COVID is still with us, but the other ones, they've come back. We were told, I remember 2021, look, when flu comes back, it's going to come back with a vengeance, and it has.
It has. It certainly has. And the difficulty is, as I say, it exacerbates other conditions.
Yeah.
And that particularly in the elderly, and that's what sort of gets a lot of people who are in medical beds. When the medical beds are full, you start on the surgical beds, and then when you go on the surgical beds, you have to cancel elective procedures because you haven't got any beds for people. And we've got the strike coming up as well. Don't ask me about the strike.
Go on, I want to ask you about the strike very quickly. I mean, the timing is not helpful running up.
No, it isn't. They know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. They're not. I don't think they are carrying public support. They know what they're doing. They're striking at the employer at the worst possible time. The difficulty is this, you know, Julia, that the contract is held between the Department of Health and the doctors. The NHS has really got nothing to do with this other than sort it all out.
It's up to Wes Streeting, basically, at the end of the day.
Down to him, and he's got to swallow his pride and sit down and talk to them.
Well, I believe they had talked quite a lot, but, you know, there we are. Anyway, just give them more money and they'll just keep coming back for more. Roy Lilly, always a good talk. She covered a lot of ground there. Former NHS Trust Chairman. Thank you very much for that. Philip Ingram, I mean, no offence, you're of a certain age as well, not much older than me. Do you get all your jabs? Do you get your flu jab and everything? I think if you're elderly, you're supposed to definitely. I don't know.
I've had flu jab a few times. When I went going through cancer treatment, I was in the vulnerable state.
Yeah.
So yes, I went and got all my jabs and bits and pieces. But
we were warned. All these disease just didn't go away, and all these people who've lost. The thing is, there is an element where people have lost a lot of their immunity because they weren't out and about, don't see as many people. But also flu bugs have exploded again.
The number one threat for a pandemic that will kill more people than has done is a flu pandemic, and we saw in the 1920s. We saw in the 1920s the Spanish flu that came through and killed millions across the world.
Yeah, absolutely, and children crucially.
Yes,
absolutely. Rather than people at the same. I know. I'm not saying I've got relatives in their 80s. Not expendable. But I think we're more worried about kids dying than 80-year-olds. I'm sorry, we are. And if you're not, then there's something wrong with you.
Children, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly. 11:48 is the time. I'm going to take a break. Well, I want to see what really helps elderly people being able to put the heating on, but their heating bills, like everyone else's, are going to go up. Why? Well, blame Ed Miliband. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. It's coming up to 11:52. Let's talk about your energy bills, because it doesn't matter what the government tells you, they're always going to keep going up. Were we not promised £300 off our energy bills by 2030 by Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer? Well, we've seen them go up by about the same amount, have we not? But 150 quid was taken off at the budget last week, although taxpayers, if you're paying tax, you're paying higher rate of tax, you're definitely going to be paying more than that to cover everyone else's bills to get those down by 150 quid, because it's still going to be paid for by the public. Now we're told they're going to go up by another £108 by 2031 brackets, it's going to be a lot more than that in the end, close brackets. Why? Well, because of £28 billion of investment in the UK's energy network. What they mean by that is a load of ugly pylons to go alongside the very ugly wind turbines and solar panels, so we can have more net zero energy that isn't reliable. It's a brilliant system. Let's talk about it with Angela Knight. She's a former chief executive of Energy UK, representing, as she did, the energy companies. Good morning to you, Angela.
Good morning, how are you?
I mean, very well indeed, but once again, just deep sighing at what a surprise. More of our money being spent on an energy system that we know we have to back up with gas and nuclear. It's crazy. Now, look, let's first talk about £28 billion of investment. This is Ofgem announcing their 5-year plan this morning. And what is that being spent on, and do we need to spend it?
Yeah, and by the way, that's 28 billion, which is the starting gun. It's 90 billion, 90 billion in all by 2030, 2031. And what a lot of this is about is building the network so that where we've got the wind farms, they can now connect into the network, and so we can use the power. Now, that
did no one think of that before?
That is extraordinary, isn't it? I entirely agree with you, Julia. After all, as far as I'm aware, it is just so incredibly obvious, you know, that if you build a wind farm, you've got to be able to connect it to the grid, and the grid's got to be big enough to take it.
I'm no expert, but I would have thought that was a key part of it, especially if we're going to be paying them not to actually use the wind.
Exactly right. Yeah. So what has been happening is, because the grid is full and can't take any more capacity in those areas where they built lots and lots of wind farms, so it's sort of around Scotland and down the east coast, now they've got round to the point, at last, of doing something about the grid. And it's probably also worth remembering that the national grid was designed to take all the power from a relatively few number of power stations when it was coal, and now they're taking all their power from thousands of power stations because it's wind and solar and all the rest of it. So the money's got to be spent on the grid if you have built what we have built and the policy of the country.
And now you've got to do it. And in terms of that grid,
Correct.
This isn't a load of power cables underneath the ground. It's a whopping great load of new pylons all across the country, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. By the way, some of this is actually on gas pipes as well.
Okay.
We do need gas. Fortunately, it's become possible to carry on saying we need gas now. You know, you sort of got blasted off public platforms saying we need gas. We do need gas. Half our electricity has been produced by gas today. You know, it's coal and all the rest of it. So some of it is for gas pipes, and I'm fine on that. With the electricity, can we put more of it underground? Can we remove the eyesore, particularly in those parts of the country which say, hey, but look, it's just crossing over us and we've got a beautiful countryside? Yeah. You can, but it takes a longer period of time.
Planning permission and all of that. Of course, it's all critical infrastructure, so it should be getting the same. But we've got horribly. I mean, I loathe the sight of those wind turbines. We've got those. We've got solar panels just strewn all over the country, and we're going to have the pylons to link everything up. Meanwhile, when the sun doesn't shine, looking out my window today, not seeing much. When the wind doesn't blow, I don't know whether it's windy out there, but I can't see whether the trees
you
where I
need
am.
the backup.
You need the backup, and then we need to rely on the gas and the oil and the nuclear.
And the nuclear, and bring it in, import it from Europe. I mean, one of the reasons why they're all starting to talk about flexible tariffs and, you know, do things at night rather than during the day is because we have an overall electricity shortage in this country. So in effect for us, you rightly point out that when you haven't got the wind and you haven't got the solar, but particularly when it's, you know, cold time of year, we will be importing as well.
But the problem with that is that a lot of the time when we need to import is exactly when those countries like Norway or France with electricity, but Norway we won't take a lot from, they will be needing it too.
And the price goes up, because when you do have those big sort of cold spells, it's a sort of anti-cyclone which sits over Europe, and then you've got no sun, you've got no wind, and you're cold. So what happens then is the price will go up and up because we haven't actually thought about building the backup at the same time.
And also,
we build the other.
At the same time, we have Russian submarines scouting out our cables, not just our communication cables, but also the cables bringing gas, bringing electricity, and they know where they are, and the equipment on those ships that are monitoring can also cut those cables as well. Then what do we do?
What we do then is we sit in the dark. We get rationed. Now, I don't know whether we're going to get as far as that, but I do know that it does get very critical sometimes, critical in the sense of have we really got enough power? And there are contracts that some of the industry have signed, which means that they will stagger a start time or stagger a finish time so that they're not pulling a big load of power at the time when everybody else is. But in amongst this, I know we tend to, and you're absolutely right to do this, Julia, we tend to focus on what does it mean to people in homes. And that's fine, and it's important. But the real worry for us as a country is this very high price of electricity, which means that we are now losing some of our major industries.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And also the government keeps pushing this AI industry, this big revolution. What does AI need? A shitload load of electricity, cheap, plentiful and reliable. The one thing we don't have.
What I suspect the government will do is a bit, as you touched on before, that they'll say, oh, we'll take £150, we'll take £300 off bills. We've met our pledge. You haven't met the pledge. You carried on an expensive route at a timescale which is too fast and a logic which isn't there. And instead they put their hand in your other pocket and take the tax out of that pocket.
Exactly. We're going to end up paying more and we're going to have less reliable energy. It's just extraordinary. Angela, so good to have you on, former Chief Executive Officer of Energy UK. Very brief word from Philip Ingram on this. It's so painful, isn't it?
Well, it's been designed by Ed Milley. What? I rest my case.
I mean, that's it. Genuinely, I've been telling everyone how insane this is. It is net zero madness. I like the fact, we've had Reform leading the way on this, but we've certainly had the Tories catching up. I mean, Labour backbenchers, we've got the Labour supporting unions. They clocked this a long time ago, that net zero means no jobs and higher bills, end of. It's just extraordinary. So much more to talk about. Can't wait to get to more of your calls as well. 0344 499 1000 on this, on Wes Streeting, looking into all these overdiagnoses and mental health problems, and of course elections delayed again. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past midday. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Thank you so much for your company today, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. If you've missed anything of the show or you want to go back to anything we've talked about this week, do have a check out on my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and you can hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be talking about that report just released in the last couple of moments about the death of Dawn Sturgis. She was basically, well, awful, very collateral damage of that attack by Putin on Sergei Skripal just back in 2018 with Novichok. We'll talk about that in just a couple of moments. What is going on with Ukraine and the peace talks? Do the Ukrainians actually want to do a peace deal with Russia on any of the terms that are on the table? We're also going to be talking about, of course, more about that, what has been called a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy by the Labour government after it's revealed that 4 mayoral elections scheduled for next May are now set to be postponed for a whopping 2 years, basically because who are we kidding? They reckon it. Councils aren't going to be ready after reform. Rubbish. The councils don't want to be electing a reform council or a reform mayor. That's what realistically Labour is scared of. Plus, we're going to be talking about that camp in rural Crowborough in East Sussex, where cadets and soldiers are being forced out of a training camp because 600 military-aged men who've arrived on small boats as illegal migrants are going to be pushed in. What's fascinating is the MOD has told the cadets, the teenagers who operate there, to cease all activity to protect their safety and well-being at the camp. They can't be there because it's not safe. But the criminal men who've arrived in this country who are going to be able to walk freely in the local village, that's apparently not a risk to all the teenagers and others in that village. Really? Well, we'll talk about that with a local member of the local population. All that coming up. I want to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about. In particular, you're getting in touch about Labour postponing those 4 mayoral elections by 2 years. And a lot of you also getting in touch about the overdiagnosis of lots of issues like autism, ADHD and the like, which Wes Streeting has launched an inquiry into. Whether they do anything about it is another thing. But do give us a call, whatever you want to say about any of the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs one standard network rate message. Delighted to say joining me today is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To you. I say this every time we have you in on a Thursday, but it's always a great day to have you in because you have so much background knowledge and a lot of things we talk about. But we have, in the last 5 minutes, seen the publication of the long-awaited report into the death of Dawn Sturgis. Now, who was she? Well, she was basically the collateral damage. A woman who, by spraying perfume on her, which had been picked up from a dumpster by her then partner, but which had been basically discarded by 2 Russian agents who'd filled it with Novichok, a deadly nerve agent which they had tried to use to kill Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia back in March 2018, basically as a revenge attack by President Putin. Well, her death had been preventable. The Russian President, Vladimir Putin, it's ruled was astonishingly reckless and bears moral responsibility for the nerve agent death of Dawn Sturgis. But in July 2018, this was a few months after that attack, according to this independent inquiry, but also a lot of criticism of MI5, the security agents, saying that basically they left Sergei Skripal as a sitting duck. Russian President had basically seen Skripal as an enemy, as someone who had been a Russian spy, a former Russian intelligence officer, basically covertly had spied for MI6, and there was no doubt at all he was clearly going to be a target by Vladimir Putin. He was a clear and obvious target, yet he lived in a cul-de-sac, not a gated community. He didn't have a proper security, like an alarm. He didn't have CCTV. He used a landline to discuss his movements, and he was living under his own name. He was a sitting duck for an attempted assassination. As it was Dawn Sturgis who died. Police officers were severely injured. One person left dead, several severely ill, and more than 80 people in hospital. It is a simple matter of luck that thousands of people in Salisbury didn't die in that attack. It was reckless in the extreme, was it not, Philip Ingram? What do you make of what this report has to say?
The report, I haven't read the detail of the report, I've seen some of the headlines that come out with it. It turned around and says that the amount that Dawn Sturgis has spread herself meant that it was unsurvivable, even if she got the best medical treatment that she did, and she did. But I'm hoping the report answers a number of other questions, because yes, there's the criticism of MI5, but I think that's a deflection.
That's a reasonable thing. You've got this guy. They knew that he was a double agent.
It is.
And here he is, living in Salisbury under his own name. The Berkshire Scruples, for goodness sake.
Whenever an agent's resettled, they'll sit down and they'll do a threat assessment against them. That'll be constantly reviewed. That was constantly reviewed. They talk to the individual about the level of security and the level of risk that's associated with that. And their eye was taken off the ball. But there are more important questions that I think need to be answered. And I suspect,
such as,
they're not being answered in here. We had a time frame between the attack on Sergei Skripal and Dawn Sturgis's boyfriend Charlie Rowley finding this unopened bottle of perfume, or what he thought was perfume, that Dawn sprayed herself with. If it was unopened, it was not the substance that was used on the door of Sergei Skripal. The Colonels Chepiga and Mishkin, the GRU agents that carried this out.
But these are the guys who said they wanted to go to Salisbury because they wanted to see the cathedral spire.
Correct. They will have worn some form of protective equipment whenever they spread that door, and they will have had another container with stuff in it. That has never been found. Now, there was no hunt for that at any stage from that came out in the public domain.
I thought that's what they were hunting for. We saw numerous pictures of massive.
No, what they were doing was they were checking for the areas that had been contaminated. So they looked at all of those people that they knew had been contaminated, where they'd been, and they found contamination elsewhere, and they were containing that and trying to stop other people coming in contact with it. But at no stage, and I've asked this question into Metropolitan Police and into the Home Office, at no stage did anyone acknowledge the fact that there could be an additional threat out there.
I didn't realise the perfume bottle was unopened. I assumed that they'd smuggled a Novichok in that perfume bottle, they'd sprayed it on the doorknob, and then they chucked it away in a dumpster. But it wasn't unopened.
Charlie Rowley has said on a number of occasions this was unopened, and it had to take it out of its package and seal it. You don't, if you spray that, put it carefully back in its package and put it in a dumpster.
No, why would you bother?
You'll wrap it up in your gloves and chuck it away. So those gloves have never been found. There will have been a cloth to wipe it, because you don't spray it because it could get into the air and you could get into your face.
This is such a deadly poison.
It's a hugely deadly poison.
Is we always knew it was Russia because it was a Russian double agent, but also that Novichok is a drug that
that only the Russians have produced.
It's the only ones that it's it's his calling card.
It was so pure. Yeah, it was so pure.
Here's the thing:
it had to come out
Putin
alive.
wanted everyone to know, including anyone who's ever double-crossed him, that it was him. Right? I mean, plausible deniability.
He did, but he wanted it to be deniable, and that's why Sergei Skripal was chosen. He was chosen because he lived in Salisbury, and he was chosen because Salisbury allowed Putin to turn around and say it escaped from the British Chemical Warfare Research Establishment just outside Salisbury at Portendown. What was the first excuse that Putin came out whenever Theresa May stood up in Parliament and claimed and said, no, this has escaped from Portendown? What happened then? The leader of the opposition at the time, Jeremy Corbyn, stood up and said, oh, how do we know it did not escape from Portendown? And therefore, Putin was sitting there smiling, going, I've created that question mark.
I remember that. Yeah, very, very interesng point. Yeah, but I don't think anyone's got any real doubt at all about the motivation. But again, this is the thing. It wasn't just Sergei Skripal and his daughter, Julia, who were poisoned and left seriously ill. The police officer, Nick Bailey,
and I know Nick and his family well.
They all survived, but I mean, it was...
He's still suffering. He lost his job over it.
This is the thing. It's not just like, everyone just went back to normal life.
No.
And I say, and another 80 people were also affected. I mean, this again. If this had got into the water supply, or somewhere right in the town centre, we could have seen thousands of people.
The advantage of Novichok is that
he's got a glass of water.
That glass of Novichok will kill everyone in London, probably kill everyone in the country. But unless I get it on my skin, then it is of virtually no danger to me. So you have to actually physically touch it. It's then absorbed in and has an effect. So you can have something that is that deadly, and this is where the effort was put in to try and identify where places have been touched, because the taniest amount, less than a grain of salt.
Can someone on production come in and take that glass of water away from him? Because it's really worrying me now. No, but I mean, we're laughing, but again, it's an extraordinary...
It's scary.
This was an act of war.
Very much so.
On our territory. Yeah. So anyone's had any illusions at all that they're not against us. By the way, it's just been announced by the Foreign Office the Russian Military Intelligence Agency, the GRU, has been sanctioned in its entirety by the UK in the wake of the Sturgis inquiry report. What does that mean?
For goodness sake. We've known about the GRU for years and years and years. The Russians have used the GRU in different actions around the world. They'll use the SVR, which is the Foreign Intelligence Service, to do other things. And of course, this isn't the first attack on British soil. We had the polonium-210 attack on Alexander Litvinenko, leaving a radioactive trail across London. Not as deadly as Novichok, but still can cause an awful lot of damage.
Thank you very much indeed. It's why we have him in. He knows his potatoes. He really does. And his glasses of Novichok I've got sitting in front of me now. 12 minutes past 12 right now is the time. Let's go to my next guest now. So I want to talk about Ukraine, but actually I'm interested to get his thoughts on this report. Actually, Mason Gifford is a former British volunteer fighter in both Ukraine and actually he fought in the Middle East as well against ISIS. He's the author of Fighting Evil. Very, very good afternoon to you, Mesa.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for waiting on the line. I just wondered if you want to give your response, actually, to that report into the Salisbury Novichok poisonings and indeed the modus operandi of Vladimir Putin, a man I'm sure you are a great fan of.
Well, it shows that we've underestimated Russia for a while. I think the attack on the Skripals was a bit of a wake-up call to how much of a rogue nation Russia is.
Yeah.
I remember back to the actual murder, in 2006 of Alexander Litvinenko, when plutonium-210 was squirted in a London hotel directly into his teacup.
Yeah.
That sort of nuclear substance was also brought onto planes full of innocent people. It was squirted inside a public hotel. That happened in 2006. We had this attack on the Skripals where a British citizen died. A British police officer was badly injured in hospital. That was a chemical attack on British streets. Yeah. And it is absolutely mad that in 2012, Cameron had Putin at the 2012 Olympics with him at the judo, trying to get sort of economic deals with Russia. We tried to normalize them. We tried to treat them like a normal country. But they haven't acted that way.
They are not. And we got the same thing with Xi Jinping in China as well. At the same time as saying these are hostile nations, and we've got Europe basically saying, "Oh, let's buy a load of military hardware from America because Trump won't give it for free anymore and sell it and buy ourselves and then give it to Ukraine." And at the same time, buying oil and gas, which has come from Russia, funding the Russian military effort in Ukraine as well. I mean, we are in cloud cuckoo land on a lot of these issues, aren't we? And I do think a wake-up call is needed. Let's talk more specifically about Ukraine, because you've actually fought on the front line. First of all, can I ask you, because we're constantly told, and I get a lot of calls on this show, and I think, again, a lot of Kremlin talking points, I'm ashamed to say. People just saying, look, Ukrainian people, if they want peace, then they'll have to give up territory, fair enough, including territory. I mean, who are we kidding? That Russia is demanding as part of that original 28-point plan, which they haven't even conquered themselves after the best part of 4 years. But the idea that actually, Ukrainians don't want to fight. They're being conscripted. They're running away. They're leaving the country. They're fearful. They don't want to fight. Their will isn't there. It's just Zelensky trying to hold on to power. Is that your experience when you were fighting on the front line there?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's utterly absurd to describe the million-strong or thereabouts Ukrainian military as conscripted, as forced to fight. I mean, when I was in Kyiv when the war started, and I went down to a recruiting office, and I saw thousands of people. It was very similar to the scenes of when Nazi Germany, or indeed the First World War, began, and British men and boys sometimes rushed to the recruiting offices and were queuing around the streets to defend their country. Yeah. That's exactly what happened to Ukraine in those early days. And the front line is so brutal. It is so horrendous. The amount of deaths and casualties and the brutality on the front line that only someone that truly believes would actually fight. There'd be rioting in their trenches if Ukrainian soldiers didn't truly believe in what they were fighting for. So at the end of the day, this is a sovereign country on the edge of Europe invaded by a brutal imperialist power. And this is a country fighting for its very survival.
And that's the key thing there, isn't it? And they've never asked for anyone from another country to put boots on the ground and spill their own blood. Their own men are doing that, and their own civilians as well. Someone pointed out to me like, Israel's killed more civilians in Gaza than Russia has killed in Ukraine. Yeah, that's because Ukraine doesn't put its women and children sitting there, you know, over its missile silos. Funnily enough, it actually tries to protect them. Many of them have left the country. They fled to be somewhere safe. In terms of the deals that have been on the table, this nonsense 28-point plan, clearly drafted by the Kremlin, the rather better, but still, I'd say questionable, 19-point plan from the European Union. In terms of all the deals, all the talks, Witkoff and Kushner heading off to Moscow, and then there's going to be more talks in Florida today and over the weekend. I mean, is there any likelihood there's going to be a plan to which both Zelensky and the Ukrainians and Vladimir Putin can agree?
Well, I mean, the original document drafted by the Russians themselves effectively was a surrender document. It was the kind of thing that you would force on a defeated power. Not one that has not only booted you out of Kyiv, but also Kherson, a place that I fought in, and currently has your army, your so-called Grand Army, advancing at literally the pace of a snail. No, Ukraine is holding on. It's under a huge amount of pressure, but they know better than anyone that the no deal is better than a bad deal. At the end of the day, just as Ronald Reagan said, you could have peace tomorrow. All you've got to do is surrender.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, when it comes to Ukraine, the Ukrainians do want to have peace. But the absurd demands of limiting their armed forces, of territorial...
Even in wartime, again, limiting their armed, basically more than halving their military. But even in wartime, they would have to be halved. I mean, that's an absurd demand.
It's as I said, I think it's a Russian attempt to belittle the Ukrainians, to make their own people feel that they've won and they've defeated the Ukrainians. They've achieved their objectives of so-called denazifying the country, despite the fact that no political party within the Ukrainian party is right-wing, as far as I'm concerned, and the president himself is Jewish. I mean, this is a democratically elected country. It stands higher on the anti-corruption indexes than Russia does.
Yes, exactly.
Vladimir Putin has killed all his opposition politicians. And at the end of the day, as they've attacked us in the past on our streets in Britain, we've woken up to this reality where Russia has invaded Ukraine and now threatens all of Europe. And what we really should be talking about now as well is boosting our armed forces, giving money to MI5 to properly track Russian agents in the UK, and become incredibly serious about our own safety.
Well, indeed, we've talked an awful lot in the last week or two about threats to this country and whether or not we should be, especially if there's some of the saber rattling by Vladimir Putin. Earlier in the week, we were talking about Vladimir Putin saying, we don't want war with Europe. Wink, wink. Yeah, you did. You literally started a war in Ukraine. But we are ready for war if Europe does. Now, there's no question at all. There is no appetite for war in Europe, or indeed by the US. But at the end of the day, we may not have a choice about it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Vladimir Putin was saying the day before he invaded Ukraine that he wasn't going to attack. We've had the absurd statements of those Russian agents saying they were only visiting Salisbury and the cathedral and all the rest of it. They're so blatant with their lies, and it's
it does have a lovely spire, though. It does have a lovely spire.
It has a truly lovely spire, and I'd encourage Russian visitors eventually in the future, when they have a more normal country, to come and visit. But I mean, at the state that it is, Russia is a terror state. It's one that funds terrorism abroad and attacks us at home.
Where are you in terms of the money that is in these European banks? $300 billion worth of Russian rubles invested. I mean, look, let's face it, London's banking system was sat on all the, basically is completely shored up by the dodgy Russian money for many years, was it not? But basically the idea that money should be seized, not just frozen, but seized and used to help Ukraine and help in that war effort. But threats from Medvedev, former Russian president, close ally of Vladimir Putin, not in the regime now, but basically saying that would be an act of war.
Well, I do think we should be funding Ukraine in that way. I mean, at the end of the day, we have lost America as a partner. It's given up its position as the leader of the free world, as far as I'm concerned, and lost a huge amount of soft power as a result of that. And Britain and Europe really do have to stand up. And we have to, as you said earlier, about the absurdity, about the sort of attempts of Europe to cozy up to Putin for many, many years, weakening our position and making ourselves completely reliant on their gas. we now need to start waking up to the reality that Russia is a threat to us, and that the world of the future is very violent and very chaotic. And unless we start investing in our armed forces and in our security, we will suffer terribly in the future.
Yeah, again, people say, look, this is our money, we shouldn't be spending abroad. This is an investment in our future as well, is it not? Maisie Gifford, thank you so much for joining us. A former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine, author of Fighting Evil, fabulous book. Interesting to see, Philip, you were nodding along to an awful lot of that. It does kind of depress me quite a lot that Donald Trump doesn't get Ukraine the way he clearly gets the plight of Israel, where the predicament they're in. But also that so many people are believing abject nonsense on social media about, it's a corrupt regime, it's not a democracy, it's all a foreign plot to put Zelensky in power, the Zelensky doesn't want peace, the Ukrainians don't want peace. It's just blatant, provable lies, a lot of this stuff.
Anyone who's been in conflict knows that nobody in their right mind ever wants conflict.
Especially people who've been in conflict.
Exactly. I have asked numerous people from lots of different backgrounds, how much corruption's going on inside Ukraine, and they say, it's no more really than we're seeing in any country across Europe, and Zelensky is dealing with it. And I've asked them.
The fact that we see people like his closest aide being sacked.
Correct.
I mean that is proof that they're trying to get on top of it.
And
probably
they're doing very well.
Probably no worse than Romania.
There is more. Well, it's no worse than what's going on in this country in many cases, and other countries around Europe. I've seen lots of it there, and therefore people are trying to fly that as a flag to try and undermine Ukraine. A lot of the bots that are behind it, the stories that are coming out, are Russian supported. And we have to recognise that if Putin gives up this conflict, the war stops tomorrow. If Zelensky gives up the fighting, then Ukraine ceases to exist, and the country and the people of the country will be further murdered and raped. And that's literally because Russia has done that.
That is what Russia does.
That's what Russia does.
Again, and I always say people again, it's just the idea that Ukraine they would fight for the best part of 4 years, lose all those men, and then go, absolutely fine.
But Putin will then come back. Putin will then come back for more, and that more will potentially have the individuals in this country having to be conscripted and go and fight them on the front line. So the Ukrainians are stopping that happening. We need to support Ukraine.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dean. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that, on the Skripal. The Skripal, it's the investigation into that Salisbury Novichok poisonings, of course, which led to the death of Britain, Dawn Sturgis. I'd also love to hear your thoughts, of course, more on Labour postponing 4 mayoral elections until 2020 after local elections in 9 areas were already delayed this year. They've been accused, the government, of a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. I mean, is there any other explanation for it? Love to hear your thoughts on that, and also conversations about overdiagnosis of things like ADHD and autism. Wes Streeting's launched an inquiry into that to try and basically deal with welfare reforms. But do you think anything's going to change? Love to hear your thoughts on that too. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:28 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me, and you are on the phone lines. 0344 499 1000 to have your say on all the topics we're talking about. Maxine is on the line from Merseyside. Maxine, you want to talk about these 4 mayoral elections that have been postponed, that everyone is basically saying is basically, Labour trying to subvert democracy.
Absolutely. I'm a first-time caller, so I'm a little bit nervous.
Don't be nervous. Cuddly old me. I'm sitting here with Philip. He's got a whole glass of Novichok over there in front of him.
I do listen to you every day. I'm really good shows that you all put on. But anyway, I'm so frustrated with what's going on, and everyone's complaining. Nothing seems to be happening to stop it. And I'm wondering, surely the King has got to get involved at some point. I do appreciate he's not supposed to meddle in politics, but I think it's getting to the stage now where it's a constitutional crisis. I think there's too much is happening. I mean, what Keir Starmer is a despot in my eyes, and
he's democratically elected. I mean, it may have been by default, but he's democratically elected.
I'll be honest with you, I feel embarrassed to admit this. I actually voted for him.
Well, there you are. It's all your fault.
Well, I know, and I do accept responsibility.
Do you want me? You don't have to answer this question, but why did you feel that he was the right choice July last year? I
was brought up, working class family, always told Labour, always voted Labour. I must admit, last couple of elections I've always voted them because I was told to and ingrained. And the last time I didn't think this election, I wanted the Tories out.
Yeah.
I was like that with reform. I didn't have the courage of my convictions. I didn't know. I thought they were not going to get in. Yeah. We need change, and I wish now I'd gone with my. Isn't that
interesting? But you think basically behaving like a despot. But the King constitutionally, could call the Prime Minister and say, "Look, I say, old chap, your Chancellor should be falling on her sword for lying to the nation. You're not doing the stuff you said you'd do."
The gaslighting over everything he's doing, whether it's to do with the economy and all these prisons and everything, he just gaslights everybody, politicians, the public. I think there must be more going on. I do believe this is orchestrated, all these foreign immigrants coming in. I think it's some sort of an orchestrated, for some reason I cannot fathom. It's like they want the downfall of the UK. And I really think it's time for the King to step in and find, what's MI5? Are they advising him? Surely they can see
the damage. Well, again, it's when things are so bad and so incompetent, it's sort of impossible to believe they could be that incompetent. I worry that it is just that level of incompetence. But you're right. It makes more sense that they're doing it deliberately. Maxine, you say that was your first call. I hope you'll call again. Absolutely brilliant to hear from you. Fantastic point. Thank you very much indeed for that. And thank you so much for listening. I really, honestly, I can't tell you. I do appreciate it. This is what we do it for. I could just be yapping, sitting on my own at home. Yapping at myself. What Maxine's saying, can't the King get involved? Philip, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the King gets involved, he would then have to abdicate because, whilst he is the head of the country. Actually, it's the will of the people. It's the people that voted Keir Starmer in.
He's democratically elected.
So democratically elected and all the rest of it. But what Keir Starmer's continuing to do day in, day out is treat the electorate as stupid. You know, he keeps coming up with these excuses. Instead of turning around and going, I've messed this up, right, let's reset, where he'd then get a lot of kudos. He's not. He's treating us like
It's amazing how much people do actually respect politicians. You go, you know what, I've changed my mind, it was wrong, and I get it, and I'm listening. People really, really reward that. They really do. And the same that you do with, you know, a family member or a friend. If you know, if someone says, I'm sorry, I messed up. Exactly. Thank you very much indeed for that, Philip. Let's go to one more call. Sarah is in Hampshire. Sarah, what do you want to talk about?
Oh, good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon.
Well, I want to have a different take on ADHD. We've got 2 children with dyslexia, and our son also has ADHD, although we haven't had it formally diagnosed. And my husband and I have taken a very different tact on it. We don't have any benefits of any sort. But what we did was we did a whole load of research. So we listened to audiobooks, we went online, we watched blogs and put coping mechanisms in place.
Oh, hello, Sarah, we lost you.
And he also has these gummies which help him to focus and so on. But our frustration with this whole welfare is people should be motivated to look after their own child and to put the scaffolding in and support and have it support.
Sarah, I'm so sorry about the quality of the line. I don't think we can continue because we keep cutting out, but I think we got the gist of it. It's about not putting a label on your kid and doing basic what you can do to sort of help them and to
take responsibility as a parent.
To work around it, to work around the disability, I suppose.
If you've got something where you can find a way of helping your child, find a way of helping your child. Don't automatically stick your hand out and say, gimme, gimme, gimme.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done, her.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about the quality of that line, though. 12:34 is the time. I'm going to take a break. We're going to be talking more about those mayoral elections being postponed for 2 years. We're going to talk to a former Labour special advisor about that. Does he agree, I wonder, that this is a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy? That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. Let's talk more about Labour postponing 4 mayoral elections by a whopping 2 years. This after already postponing 9 sets of elections in 9 different areas earlier this year for a year, some of which are in the same area. Now, the 4 mayoral elections are in new combined authorities: Essex, Hampshire and the Solent, Sussex and Brighton, and also Norfolk and Suffolk. But we're told that apparently they need more time to complete their reorganisation. The idea they need 2 years to complete their reorganisation is quite something, given that's more than 2.5 years away. Let's talk to Kevin Marr. He's a former Labour Special Advisor. He's also now Associate Editor of Labour Uncut. Good afternoon to you, Kevin. Kevin, can we hear you? Oh, I think I can hear you now.
Got me now.
Can I just ask, James Cleverly, the Conservative front bencher, has called this a scandalous attempt to subvert democracy. Do you agree?
It's not quite that. It doesn't look good. It isn't good. It's not what I would advise, I have to say. I think this looks terrible. The first function of the state is to be able to call and run free and fair elections regularly. And if you're not going to do that for some reason, it better be a damn good reason. And this isn't a damn good reason.
Well, I didn't even think that COVID was a good enough reason during the pandemic, frankly.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. I think democracy must punch its way through at all costs.
Then, I mean,
what we've got here is
but the idea that
bureaucratic ineptitude.
The idea that it's ineptitude and it's incompetence is also a bit risible, given that only 2 months after VE Day in 1945, this country was able to hold a general election in July 1945, and yet it's going to take 2.5 years more planning and reorganisation for these local councils to hold a mayoral election. It defies belief. Now, if they are that slow at their work and that incompetent, none of the people involved should be employed at all, and they should all be out on their backsides tomorrow. If that is not the case, that they're not so incompetent, then this is a political decision. And it is this party, Labour Party, running scared of losing yet more elections next May. You know as well as I do, the local elections across England, the Senate, the Holyrood elections in Scotland, the Senate, the Welsh Assembly in Wales, they are looking to make big losses. These are another 4 mayoral elections that could signal, as my guest Philip Ingram pointed out earlier, they could send a clear signal to MPs in those areas, you don't have a chance of winning the next election. At which point, this is more about Keir Starmer trying to stay in power than it is about any other reason.
Well, I mean, if it was, then as you point out, we've got a mega set of elections in May anyway in Scotland, Wales, and across England. So losing another 4 elections, frankly, wouldn't make that much difference.
But there are not so many elections in those areas, though.
Yeah, I mean, but part of the issue, part of what's going on is the government has been too ambitious or not understood clearly enough the rearguard action that district councils and county councils would take to prevent local government reorganisation, because that's really what's sitting at the heart of this. The government is top down trying to create these combined authorities, the mayoral models that you see with the Andy Burnhams and the Andy Streets and all the rest of it. They're rolling them out everywhere. Earlier in the year in Cumbria and Cheshire, they've pushed it back to 2027, and then today they're going to push, as you said, these other 4 back to 2028. And what's going on underneath is that they're trying to remodel the councils that sit underneath these combined authorities. And you've got district councils and county councils. They're trying to squeeze them together, which is a good thing. It's delayering local government. It's getting rid of piles of deadwood, and it will save a lot of money in the long term. But it's trying to do that at the same time as create these combined authorities at the same time. And the mechanics are not going together very well. Now, this is officials, frankly, that have been too ambitious in biting off more than they can chew and not understanding that actually the district councils don't want to be abolished, so they're trying to drag their feet as much as they can.
I mean, that sounds like a reasonable expectation.
Yeah,
but genuinely, are we genuinely saying that the British government can't organise some local officials to do their job? By the way, if the officials are blocking it, you sack them. That's how it works in the real world. I mean, let's hope Russia doesn't invade, because if we can't even get some officials on a local council in Sussex or Suffolk to do their job, we're going to be a bit stuffed, aren't we, when Putin
we can't build a north-south rail line in this country anymore. We can't do anything in this country anymore. So it shouldn't come as a great surprise that when you've got a bunch of councils that don't want to be abolished. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas, as Dennis Healy put it. But it will happen. It will happen. But it looks terrible when you push back democratic elections. And ministers and their advisors should have seen how this would play out, and they should have moved to get away from this problem at the earliest sign that this is taking longer than they thought it was going to take, and they didn't, and it looks terrible.
Well, you keep saying it looks terrible. I agree with you, but it's not just looking terrible. It is terrible. Local people not having a say on their local democracy for a long period of time. But this is the crucial thing. And we know in a lot of very slow-moving organisations, the inertia is strong. And you say the pushing back is strong. We see that in the civil service across the board, local councils, and of course in Whitehall as well, NHS, you name it, across the board. But here's the thing: you put a deadline in because that focuses everyone's minds. If you put a deadline in 2.5 years' time, they're going to move even slower.
You say to your officials, this has got to happen. Democracy comes first. And if I make a commitment that there's going to be an election on that date, you better damn well make sure it does. Now, get out your onesie, turn Homes Under the Hammer off, and get back to work.
Thank you.
And that's what should happen. And ministers need to push down and sort of say, we just can't have this. We just can't have elections being pushed back. We've got every other political party in the game having a pop at us today about this. It's not good enough.
It is quite something.
And it comes on top of things like, the jury trial stuff earlier in the week and all the rest of it. It starts to build a pattern that gives the government a very, very kind of unsavoury brand, if you like, in terms of cutting corners and all the rest. Now, there are perfectly plausible reasons about all the issues that it's dealing with, but this is one. This is utterly preventable. They should have seen this coming. They should have moved this out of the way. They should have put some stick around in the departments, and they should have said, make damn sure that we get all these issues resolved so that we can have smooth elections in 2026. And it's not happened.
Well, indeed, and it is quite something if you've got Reform UK, the Tories, and the Liberal Democrats and the Green parties all united on the same issue. Kevin Marr, thank you very much for joining us. Former Labour Special Advisor, Associate Editor of Labour Uncut. Philip Ingram, he's making a point. Look, this looks terrible. People aren't going to like. They shouldn't have done it. But again, it is terrible. It's not just looking terrible. But again, isn't this part of the whole thing that the Labour abject failures, where it's not only the stuff they do is bad, their PR for things are bad, even their PR for things that are quite sensible is bad. Their level of incompetence, abject incompetence is so it's across the board.
Yeah. I'm about to give Kevin a heart attack and agree with him because him and I have.
I thought he might make an attempt at defending, not a word.
Debates over different things, and we usually disagree on some things. But in this, I agree with him. It does look extremely bad. I think Kevin was being kind, but I can understand from his background and the fact that he's still the associate editor of Labour Uncut that he was trying to. Ease what he was saying to make it not look as bad on the Labour Party as possible, but it's inexcusable. There are no plausible reasons. Kevin suggested there was. There are no plausible reasons behind this whatsoever, and he's 100% right in saying that democracy must come first. And if ministers wanted to do that, they should turn around to Keir Starmer and say, "No, sorry, you've got that wrong." Turn around and say you've got that wrong, and continue with the elections.
No, but also here's the deadline. Do it, and if you can't do it, get out of the way. We'll get someone who will. Once again. We have an awful lot of officials because I'm rather in favour of this reform, like the planning reform and this one. It's quite a lot of things. I always like to give credit to any party and stuff that and these things take a lot of effort. But if you haven't got people at the top doing it, you don't put the people who are going to lose their jobs in charge of doing that. You put someone else in. But we've got such inertia in all of our civil service. You can't do that, and that's part of the problem because they forget that they're servants.
Yeah, it's the biggest problem. You get two types of people. You get the disablers who turn around and go, that's difficult. And you get the enablers who are the minority that you give them an issue and they go, God, I've got so many other things to do. Right, I'll just get it done then.
Yeah, exactly. And they're mostly being held back by those other people, aren't they? 12:46 is the time. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to be talking more about those teenage cadets that have been advised by the MOD to stop doing parades, stop having any time at the Crowborough migrant camp, as 600 fighting age males who've arrived illegally on those channel boats are going to be moved in. Perfectly safe for the local community, and yet the MOD has said the cadets who are teenagers have to move out. Why? Because it's not safe for them. So it's not safe for the cadets, but it is safe for those migrant men, undocumented, men of fighting age, arrived here illegally, to be able to wander freely into the local village where there are not just other teenagers, but there are young children and women and other girls who we know are already at higher risk of assault in areas where we have seen such young men moved in. Well, we're going to talk about this with Kim Bailey, who's been a campaign group that has been set up to try and challenge this latest asylum camp. We're going to talk about that up next with her. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:50 is the time. Just to let you know, the Prime Minister has condemned the Kremlin's disregard for innocent lives as the UK summoned the Russian ambassador, announces new sanctions on Russia. This after that report into the killing of Dawn Sturgess in the Novichok poisonings in Salisbury back in 2018. And that's what's just been announced by the Prime Minister. Right now, let's talk about, another basic assault on our territory. This by men of, many tens of thousands of men of fighting age, but they're not arriving being delivered by Vladimir Putin. They're arriving on those rickety dinghies across the channel. It's got to put them somewhere, so they put them in hotels. Well, lots of demonstrations about that. So some of them are being moved to camps. In the case of Crowborough in East Sussex, one large camp still being used by military and by cadets. Some 600 undocumented foreign men of fighting age are going to be put into the camp right next to a local village where many families live. Now, the cadets who normally train at this camp, long-standing training camp, they've been told that was it on Wednesday night, last night. That was their last parade, and they are going to cease all activity. Why? because the Ministry of Defence has said the government takes the safety and well-being of all cadets extremely seriously. So it's not safe for the cadets to be there at the camp with the 600 men, but it's perfectly safe, apparently, for those 600 men to be able to wander freely into the local village where, guess what? Local Brits, men, women and children are living. Well, let's talk about this with Kim Bailey. She's the chair of Crowborough Shield. It is a campaign group which is setting up to legally challenge the planned temporary asylum camp nearby. Good afternoon to you, Kim.
Hi, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Well, by the way, all credit to you. Big round of applause to you and many others, like the Pink Ladies and others in Epping, and indeed this Pink Ladies group at Crowborough as well, who are just coming together and not just moaning about it, taking action to do something about it. But what did you make of the MOD ruling that their cadets weren't safe? The teenage cadets aren't going to be safe around these men, but apparently it's fine for them to wander in, you know, say outside a primary school or a nursery or anywhere else in the village.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous if you think that they are under the guard. So these cadets, when they are parading during the week, they're under the guard of 4 ex-military personnel. So if they're not deemed safe in the camp under that guard, why on earth is it deemed safe in the community? You've got actually a bus stop right outside the camp, which obviously children use to get to school. And again, in the evenings, and obviously it's winter now, so it's dark. I don't understand, and no one understands how they can say this is safe.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we don't know who these men are or where they're from. We know that 90% plus of the men who get on these boats just, you know, throw away their documentation or hide it somewhere. All the people smugglers have got it, but we don't know for sure who they are a lot of the time. And we also know that the rate of criminality of a lot of these young men is sky high. We have seen, again, I don't believe for a moment every single one of these men is a rapist or a sexual assaulter, but too many have been proven to be, and one would be too many. But I think a lot of us thought, well, you know, we don't want them in the hotels, and then we found out they're not going to be in the hotels. OK, they're going to put them into the local community, into these hostels. Well, they're even more of a risk then, I would have thought. We don't know where they are. But then also the idea of camps, and a lot of people were quite supportive of the idea. But I think most of us thought it would be a military camp in the middle of nowhere, with fences and guards, and they wouldn't be able to get out. But this camp is, I mean, talk us through, like, you know, where the village is and where the camp is.
So the camp is just on the edge of the town. So you've got obviously hundreds of acres of forest land, and then just on the edge you've got kind of the barracks, which are set literally a road away. So there's houses all around the camp as well. So it's obviously lots of residents. It's probably a 20-minute walk from the camp to the town centre. So it is walkable.
Yeah.
There's nothing obviously in our town. You've got some churches and some schools. The only thing for young people to do in our town is the cadets. And it's a national resource. It's not just about local cadets. Obviously, they are the primary focus here for us. But it's a national resource. It's used by thousands of cadets every year. It's the only adult training site. But if you think, you know, COVID put all these kids into lockdown and mental health was, you know, through the roof. This has been a lifeline for hundreds of teenagers.
Socialising, structure, great, absolutely brilliant for young people.
And now, you know, recovery from COVID is still happening. And now they're going to take that away. Yeah. And a lot of the kids, I actually hosted a meeting last night with lots of the parents and the cadets themselves. And the stories that I heard were it's heartbreaking that actually the MOD would allow this to happen. Yeah. They're talking about, you know, their SDR, their Strategic Defence Review, is to increase cadets by 30% by 2030.
By closing down their training camps, But this is the thing. I think, again, a lot of us would have thought there must be these disused training camps. There's loads of MOD land. No, you're using one that's literally being used and one that's close to families. I mean, how concerned? I mean, that's a massive issue for the young people in the local town and village. But it's also, you know, the clear safety issue here. We saw what happened with the Bell Hotel. You know, an Ethiopian man got convicted of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. Thank God it was a lot more minor than it could have been, and sexually assaulting a woman who intervened. He was convicted. He then got released by mistake and then was on the run for 3 days. Now deported. But I mean, absolute case. We have another case, an allegation of rape against someone from the same hotel. We've got numerous cases where people coming in through this illegal route have been accused of or convicted of later of serious sex crimes against often young teenage girls. That must be a huge worry for people in the local area.
Absolutely it is. And last year, the town council decommissioned all the CCTV. So there's no CCTV in Crowborough, and it's such a low crime rate. You essentially don't need it. But if these people are going to be going into the camp, then absolutely it needs it. But there has been absolutely nothing from our district council on anything about safety, impacts, how the town are going to be supported. I think there was something from the local police that said, yes, there will be some additional resources. But what that looks like, we don't know. And
they'll give an extra shift to one copper on a Friday night. There you go. You got your resource. So what you're whinging about? I mean, that's the joke.
I mean, and I've been up to Parliament now twice. The first time was with Alex Norris. We spoke with him. He's the Minister for Immigration. And he actually looked me in the eye and said to me that asylum seekers don't generally go missing. It's very few. And I challenged him on this and said, well, hold on. It's the people that are likely to be deported that are going to be the ones that abscond. Yeah. And he looked me in the eye and he said, no, they don't do that because they don't want to be out of the asylum system. And actually then we hear that there's 53,000 of them missing, which is what nearly 40% of those that have come over on small boats. It's just and then again this week with them it was the same thing. There's very little in terms of safety for the town, and it's unacceptable.
Listen, Kim, thank God for people like you keeping on fighting for your local community, and I'm sure you've got the whole community behind you. Kim Bailey, Chair of Crowborough Shield there. Thank you very much. They're fighting on behalf of all of us, even if we don't live anywhere near that town and village, I keep saying village, it's town in East Sussex. Philip Ingram, your response to that?
Well, if the MOD hasn't found somewhere else for those cadets to go in, this is attacking the local community to put these migrants in there, and it's wrong. Maybe what we should be doing is turning around to the migrants and saying that we're going to create our own British Foreign Legion. Now they're in a military camp. We just put armed guards around the outside and start to properly train these fighting age men, and then
I tell you, I think a lot of them are already trained in weapons, but there we are. But just not let them in the first place.
Well, exactly.
I know, going crazy with my mad ideas. Sorry about that. Anyway, Philip Ingram, it's been an absolute pleasure having your company. It always is great. You get so much of your background knowledge in your role as a former senior military intelligence officer, particularly with that report on the Salisbury Novichok poisonings. Ian Collins is here. We've removed the glass of water, which Philip claimed